of the committee, Donna said she might be delayed. She had a doctor's appointment, so I think she said to start without her. So I would like to call the meeting to order. I have 6:02, and could we have a roll call, please, Donna?
Kathy Patnode,
Here.
Dave Florio,
Here.
Luke Murray,
Here.
James Pearson,
Here.
Craig Levis,
Here.
Lori Andrews,
Yeah.
Sarah Mangiarelli.
Here. Okay. I'd like to have a moment of silence while we consider the work before us this evening. Thank you very much. So I believe, Mr. Murray, if you could honor us with reading the mission statement for Coventry Public Schools.
Yes. The mission of Coventry Public Schools is to inspire, support, and challenge all students to be in an inclusive community, to be critical thinkers, effective communicators, reflective learners, responsible individuals, and global citizens.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 2, the approval of our minutes. Our reference number 1, I'm sure you've all had a chance to take a look at those. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the open meeting session of May 28, 2020 and June 11, 2020 as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I should say, Donna, if you could do a roll call vote, please.
Sure. Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to agenda item number 3, personnel recall. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to recall Ashley Dudley, regular 1.0 score teacher at Black Rock Elementary School for the 2020-2021 school year, recalled position on June 11th, 2020.
There's a
I
second.
second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, could we have a roll call, please?
Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item number 4, which is the PBGR class of 2021 discussion and vote. It was our reference number 3. Mr. Levis, did you want to start us on this?
Sorry. No, I'll turn it over to Ms. Zaborski. I think we remember that they had presented on the PBGR changes for the class of 2020, and so now Ms. Zaborski, and I'm not sure if she has other individuals from the high school, they're going to talk about the changes that are needed based on one of the conditions is based on our vision of the graduate that was adopted. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Zaborski.
Thank you. Hi,
Aye.
I'm going to share this presentation,
Okay.
and I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what we're proposing. First of all, I'd like to thank our committee members who really worked hard. We did start this process in January when we had a significant number of faculty members who volunteered to be on a committee to determine what the PBGR requirement would be. And that took us a few months to determine that we were going to be doing the graduation portfolio and presentation. And then we got hit by COVID, and I put out a plea to the faculty, and I was still able to get a significant number of teachers to step up and be involved in producing the PBGR graduation portfolio and presentation. And I just can't thank them enough. They had so much on their plate, but yet they still did all of this work. I specifically want to thank Kristen Capwell, Julie Macarone, Tony Marcella, Tiffany Risch, and Brooke, because they were the steering committee, and we really worked hard moving this along. And I think it's a wonderful product. The process that we went through was very collaborative, and we went through consensus in order to decide on all of the components. After we were able to develop the proposal, we got approval from the whole committee, we got approval from our administration team, we brought it to our leadership team, and they approved it, and then at the end of the school year, we had a full faculty meeting, and it was approved at the full faculty meeting. And I just think that's such an important component for buy-in and for teachers to move forward with producing what we're going to be asking them to produce. The benefits for the students for the portfolio and the presentation, it's going to give students a significant amount of voice and choice. We'll talk a little bit more about that as I go through the different components of the proposal. And of course, it is aligned to the vision of the graduate, which we're really excited about. We're going to be incorporating reflections and revisions into the tasks that we're going to be developing, which is something that we don't do whole school consistently now, which I'm really excited about. But I think one of the things that I'm really the most excited about is it's going to allow for a community celebration. The project, the graduation presentation itself, the hope is that it will be a community celebration. I like to refer to it as the first step onto the stage of graduation. I did skip one of the slides. Sorry, this is Zoom meetings are a little new to me. I do want to point out that when we were doing all of this work distance, we needed to make sure that we were all on the same page with what it was we were producing. So we came to consensus on the purpose of our work was going to make sure that we produced a PBGR that was aligned with the vision of the graduate. We felt that was really important because, you know, all of the work that had been done and the approval that had taken place with the vision of the graduate. I'm going to talk a little bit about the portfolio. So this is going to require that we have a gradual implementation. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. But the portfolio itself is going to consist of applied learning performance-based tasks. They can either be teacher-initiated or student-initiated, just giving the students more choice in what they want to have in their portfolio. Our hope is that most of the students are going to be able to have their portfolio completed by the end of their first semester senior year, which will give them the second semester senior year to work on their presentation. And it will be some form of an electronic portfolio, but we have not determined the platform yet. So the gradual implementation is going to come from the fact that we as teachers are going to be developing these applied learning performance-based tasks. We are not saying that we don't already have them, but some of them may need to be tweaked or updated or changed so that we're assured that all of these tasks that the students are going to be putting into their portfolio are applied learning and do have the component for the performance-based piece in there. Every course will be offering students, full year courses will be offering students 2 applied learning performance-based tasks, and every semester course will be offering 1 applied learning performance-based task. In order for us to be able to hold the students accountable, we are only going to be able to offer the class of 2024 13 tasks by their graduation year, which will be, that's the minimum requirement that students will need to have in their portfolio. 18 for 2025, and then the 22 tasks by the year 2026. So we're going to have, like I said, 2 kinds of tasks. We're going to have a teacher-initiated tasks, and we're going to have student-initiated tasks. The teacher-initiated tasks will have to be aligned to the vision, will have to be proficiency-based and content standard, and they will have to be a true applied learning performance-based tasks, and we're going to be developing a criteria and a rubric to use to determine and to make sure that that's taking place. In addition, we're going to give students the opportunity to have student-initiated tasks, and their tasks will also have to be aligned to the vision. It will also have to be a proficiency-based task. We're not going to ask students to align to content. We just feel that that would be too much. The other great thing about this, if a student-initiated task is validated and it can be put into the portfolio, that same task can be used by other students as well. So if a U.S. history class is offering an assignment that the student really feels helped them learn one of the components of the vision of the graduate and wants to use it, and they bring it to the validation committee and it's validated, every student after that will be able to use that as well. The student-initiated tasks, though, will enhance but not replace teacher-initiated tasks. Again, I talked a little bit before about how they're going to include the reflection and the revision. So every task will have to have a reflection component embedded in the task, and every task that is a portfolio quality task will give the students the opportunity to revise the task to proficiency. The reflection will be asking general questions, and it can be in any format, but it will have to include what's the component that is aligned to the vision of the graduate. How did doing that task help the student achieve or make growth towards that component? And what did the student do well, and what can the student do differently next time to do better? We're going to have additional reflections that will be housed in the portfolio that will help students keep track of their history of their growth towards the vision of the graduate. When students first come in their freshman year, we're going to ask them to do a reflection about where they're at the time that they come into the high school. And then several other reflections will be taking place throughout the year. And these also will be stored in their portfolio. And the purpose of this, like I said, is to make sure that the student has a very clear record of how they have made growth towards the components of the vision of the graduate. They'll have a presentation. We'll have the presentation we want to make as personal as possible, so we've put limited criteria on it. We really want the students to give us their story of their time, and it can certainly start at pre-K, but how they went through their educational journey and either achieved or made growth towards the different components of the vision of the graduate. We are going to ask them to keep it within 12 to 15 minutes. We're allowing them to use any format that they would like to do the presentation. It will have to include a visual, and it would have to include a portion of it that will be real time, so that there can be an interaction between the committee that's watching the presentation and the student. We're going to ask the students to cover in their presentation who they are as a learner, how they have worked towards meeting the components or the elements of the vision of the graduate, what their plans are after graduation, and how they plan to achieve them. So I'm going to stop sharing. And does anybody have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Anne Marie. That was wonderful. Before we turn this over to the committee to ask any questions they might have, I neglected to give the floor to Jim Murphy. This is a different kind of like a webinar, not a typical Zoom meeting. So, Mr. Murphy, if you could explain to the public when we get to public questions, how they would respond or what they would have to do to get our attention.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. When it gets to a point in the meeting where public comment is permitted, there should be a button somewhere on your screen. It's in a different spot depending on whether you're using a computer or Chromebook or your phone or an iPad. There should be a raise your hand button. Just click that button and then we will see that someone has their hand raised, and in turn, we'll bring you into the call, and you'll just need to say your name and your address, and you can join the meeting.
Great, thank you, Mr. Murphy. Little slip there. I'm just going to start with Mr. Pearson. You've got the floor if you'd like to ask Anne Marie any questions or make any comments.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I believe that means Mr. Murray is next.
No questions. I just want to say thank you for the work. I think the self-assessment portion starting as a freshman year is really important, because I think one of the things when you talk to students, they say, like my kids included, I don't know what I learned in school. I didn't make any growth. And the truth is, if you look back, if you carry a diary forward, you found that you made significant growth. So I think making them kind of come to that conclusion at the culmination of their high school career is a great thing. And combining all that sort of the learning experience at the end is very important. So thanks for all the work on it. I look forward to the sort of boots on the ground plans that come forth out of this framework.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. And then finally, Mr. Florio, any comments, questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for allowing me to comment. Anne Marie, this is amazing. It's a self-assessment for the children. Well, how many freshmen have the opportunity to look back on their senior year and see what they were and what they're graduating as, and what kind of progress they made over that 4-year period? And it's a true self-assessment tool, and I think it's something they'll use for the rest of their lives in terms of looking back on it, seeing where they were when they were 15 or 14 and where they are now that they're 18 or 19. And we'll continue to do it once they're in college. And it's a great tool. It's a great tool for them to have in their kit. You're welcome, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. My only comment is I want to, my hat's off to the team. I love that this, all points back to the vision of the graduate. Your committee has worked very, very hard to make this something worthwhile that I think students and the faculty, parents will all appreciate when it's finally in place. And so I wanted to thank everyone for their fine work on this, and it's gratifying to see that this was able to come together given the constraints of COVID. So I really want to thank you and your team in your presentation and the things that we received in the packet. It was great. So thank you very much. Before I turn it over to the public, is there any other panelists that would like to make any comments?
Could I say just a couple things? One is I think it's this whole process with the vision of the graduate and how that's driving just a whole educational experience in Coventry. And I think we're fortunate, not only as administration, but in terms of a school committee, because everybody here has been part of that whole process. So I think in terms of this being much more tangible to us, I think that's an incredible experience that we've all had, a common experience that we're sharing, because a lot of times that, a lot of things are presented to a school committee and, we become informed, but at a certain level. And I said, we've been through this with this whole vision of the graduate process from the beginning. So I think that's something really to highlight, and hopefully the community has experienced that also. And so I'm really excited. I also want to remind the committee that there's a supplemental document that is in your packet that it lists all the changes that were discussed in the PowerPoint. So this is what you will be voting on. So, but again, I want to thank Mrs. Zaborski and that extensive team for all the feedback and the hard work and pushing through despite what's been going on in our lives. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Anybody else before I move on to see if there are any questions from the public? Okay, Mr. Murphy, do you see any hands raised?
I do not see any hands.
All right, thank you. So I guess we can move to the motion. So is there a motion to approve the PBGR class of 2021 present as presented?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the PPGR class as presented.
I second the motion.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Madam Chair.
Roll call, please.
Kathy Patnode,
Yeah.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
James Pearson,
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Craig, is that your
Thank
dog?
you very much. Who started that? Some unwanted visitor. Again, thank you so much, Mrs. Zaborski and your committee. Moving on to number 5, which was the school committee dates, our reference number 4. Mr. Levis, did you want to say anything about this?
No, I'd ask Mr. Murphy if you don't mind putting those up on the screen. So our lovely audience has an opportunity to see. So these are the dates. I remember the conversation we had last year. I think it was last year. We tried to do like a workshop meeting and business meeting. And I think we did that for maybe a couple of months, but it kind of, things didn't align. So we've kind of taken that off and just gone back to our regular meeting dates. And hopefully that's okay with the committee, especially during these times. You know, I think it's important that we have the flexibility to do whatever we need to do at a school committee meeting. So,
Agreed. Any questions from the committee? Mr. Pearson?
Just a reminder, per state law, we're supposed to be doing this at the beginning of the year, not the middle of the year. So I'd like to see this agenda item back on in December or January, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
may I just say something?
Sure, Donna.
We do have the yearly calendar, January to December, that was approved and is posted with the Secretary of State. This is in addition to that.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we're doing it twice.
We have to do it twice. They overlap. One is January to December, but we follow the school calendar, so it's July to June.
I don't like duplicating. You know, personally, don't like duplicating effort. I prefer just to do it once. That's my preference. Thank you.
Yes, and any other questions from committee members? Did anybody see any dates that didn't work for them?
Madam Chair, I just want to thank Mr. Levis. December 10th is my wife's birthday, so I'll be able to spend December 10th with my wife this year. Thank you very much.
Sure, we worked right around you, Dave.
Yeah.
I was just going to interject and say, just on the workshops, I think it was a valid idea. Obviously, with everything this year, and we found that the accommodations didn't work out as well as we'd hoped. But I don't know if we want to permanently abandon the effort on it. You know, when we get into budget season again, I'm sure we can discuss amendments to the schedule as we go if needed. So, I just want to put that out there that I do think that in premise that format could have worked. We had some hurdles and everything kind of fell apart.
Right.
That's all.
Right. Yeah, and we can easily put, you know, we have the dates, at least you know the dates, we put them in our calendar. We can modify as committee sees fit, so.
The other thing too is now that we're on this format, it doesn't mean you necessarily, depending on when executive orders run out and if this becomes state law eventually to be able to use this format, we may be able to utilize it for work sessions and supplemental meetings. So that might be exciting. So we can, you know, not have to go to a facility. We can just do it here. So that's all.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the school committee meeting dates for the 2020-2021 school year as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
Any other further comments from the committee? Hey, Donna? Hi.
Okay, Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Who
Dave
seconded the
Florio,
motion? Yes, who seconded the motion?
who seconded?
I did, Luke.
Murray.
Okay, Luke. Okay, yes.
Dave, all right, Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to number 6, which is the FY20 budget update. Did you want to start this, Mr. Levis?
Sure, I'll turn it over quickly to our financial expert. This is Ms. Mangiarelli, but there's been a lot of conversation out there about the savings, and one thing, and I think we know that if we don't have a good answer, we're not going to give an answer. We've been honest about it, and I think Ms. Mangiarelli's done a phenomenal job, I think, with the document. I'm going to ask Mr. Murphy to, again, you can share this document on the screen, and I think this is a clearer picture in terms of where we're at in terms of our FY20 budget, which would include any potential savings. And again, I'll turn it over to Ms. Mangiarelli.
Right, so on your screen is the typical budget format that we used. This is the revised version that went out. So the first one that I sent out didn't specify the federal CARES information. So you can see, as I sent out earlier, what the state did was they used the CARES money to fill a budget gap. So they reduced our state education aid by $623,000. And then they're using Federal CARES Act to fill that budget gap. So it will be recorded as FY20 aid, although we won't receive that $623,000 until July. So I did let the town know that from a cash flow perspective, that we will have a timing on that, but that is essentially how the money will come in. Down at the bottom, you see the projected surplus before recommended assignment of funds at the 1.7 million. And then below that, I am listing out some of the money that money will need to go to. I'm sorry, they are wild tonight. So you'll see we have a school lunch deficit for FY20 showing a reduction of about $200,000 that will transfer there. I have the transportation contingency, so if we are required to pay all or part of our FY20 contract, we will be responsible for that $995,000. The retiree benefit fund, we talked about this a little earlier in the year. This came about 2 contracts ago when some retiree incentives were offered and they were accounted for in a separate fund, but it wasn't funded. So we corrected that last year. I have it corrected this year, but there is a balance in there. So this is trying to clean up that residual. And then that leaves a balance of the surplus of about $345,000. Again, I expect that to be used completely for next year. So I had sent out a summary. This is a little bit on FY21, but I had sent out a summary saying if we use all of that surplus next year, we still are looking at only about $287,000 at this point to use towards COVID if we try and account for the $1.8 million deficit. So that's kind of the picture that's at. I do need to say that we are still finding some fallouts in ransomware data. I found a benefit issue that was supposed to have been reported. And again, this is not, this is Phoenix, our old software company that we're having some issues. So I think we have everything captured now, but I would say that those residual fallouts from that ransomware attack, we're still making sure that everything is accounted for exactly where it's supposed to be. So we are switching auditors this year. So I look forward because they'll have a fresh set of eyes to go through this. But I think that this, for right now, gives the best snapshot of where I think we're going to end the year.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. I'm going to turn it back to the committee members to ask their questions if they have any. So, Mr. Pearson, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah. Early on when the pandemic started and we shut everything down, I think what becomes glaringly obvious now, in hindsight, it is 2020, so take that into account. There could have been more savings, and I don't want to start picking this apart and saying, oh, there could have been savings here and there. That's not the point. The point is, I would have really appreciated a stronger effort to realize some savings during that 3-month period, because now with the current budget situation, with the town council giving voting to send a 0% to the all-day referendum, we need every penny we can get, and I don't think we got every penny we can get by far. So just understand my significant and severe concern about that fact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mrs. Colonian, did you have any comments or questions? You're muted. You need to unmute yourself.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Mr. Murray, do you have anything?
I do. So Sarah, the additional CARES money that was referenced, the $50 million from the state, that was going to be distributed through the Title I formula. That's not reflected in this document, correct? I'm not seeing it.
No, so the 50 million is additional borrowings from the state. That is a Title I allocated, but that will be for FY21. So that won't have an FY20 impact.
Right. But this is just, so we're just looking at roll up to date.
Correct. This is just this fiscal year.
Okay. And then the bus contract, I know there's going to be questions, additional questions on that and where that stands. Can you explain a little bit? I don't know if the fellow committee members, I had a conversation with you earlier, but where we stand on that in general?
Right, so in general, where we stand on that contract is I haven't heard any follow-up at all from the company since we said that we weren't paying. You know, we had worked, and I believe Mr. Levis had shared this, that we had reached out to the company. We had looked to make different offers to the company to help keep our Coventry employees on the payroll. We had said that we would pay in March and that we had asked additional financial information to look to see if we could continue that, some type of payment past that, so that people would go on unemployment. We changed that once we found out that, and through the grapevine from some of the drivers, that they had already been laid off while we were trying to work a deal with them. So at that point, we did stop payment on that contract. The biggest concern that has been raised that I could see potentially coming up is the cost of the buses. They're brand new buses. It's a fixed asset. They were purchased just for us. So that would be the only option that I could think of, you know, an area that we should be aware of. The drivers are not driving, you know, we're not using the fuel, we're not transporting. But the cost of the buses is something that I'm keeping on my radar more so than anything else. And that's where I think we should be aware of. On the flip side, I think any of the proposals indicate the need for more buses next year. So I don't know if there will be a lot of conversations until we have an idea of what next year is going to look like and what our usage or the number of buses that we'll need will be.
Okay, so currently it's being negotiated to some extent, or we're looking at next year as part of the bigger piece of the pie. But I think that's a question that's just going to keep coming up because there's going to be an inclination probably by the public to look at this and say, well, if they didn't provide the service, why are you paying? And that it's important to point out that there's only a few bus companies that actually service districts that we're going to need one of those companies to fulfill a very, needs coming up in a couple months. And that in the interest of fairness, we did make them buy the buses, the propane buses, when they took on a new 5-year contract. So I guess my other question is for Member Pearson, because he brought it up as far as savings. I'm just, because I am interested, what savings specifically?
I'm sorry, Mr. Murray, I pointed out that I wasn't going to start picking apart this, my comments area by area. So I respectfully decline to answer your question. Thank you.
Now, I just want to jump in.
If you want to throw the administration under the bus, no pun intended,
Mr. Pearson,
go ahead, but I'm not doing it. Mr. Levis, I same comment for you.
You brought it up. I'm just,
apart.
if you're going to have it, this is for dialogue. This is a meeting like any other meeting, right? I'm sick of just making a comment. I'm asking you a question because if there's identified savings specifically that you see that we should be looking at, that's part of what we should be doing, right? Mm-hmm. So we should be doing all efforts right now, especially when we just got cut 1.8 million, to look at those categories and not repeat the same mistakes. So that's why I'm asking. It's not malicious or anything else. It's a discussion.
A little too late to make the cuts because we're at the end of the fiscal year, so it matters not.
I feel like that's throwing the administration under the bus by throwing it out there and not dialogue about it.
Exactly.
So,
I mean,
as superintendent, I'm going to protect our staff, and like I said, I'm open. I think we've done extremely well during this period of time, and the reason we kept the bus contract money on there, and even though everybody's saying, oh, that's 900,000 we can use, we're being honest about it because at some point we're going to have to go back to the bus company. We wanted to pay the employees throughout, right? And we're going to have to go back, probably negotiate and see what we can do because I don't want to be without our transportation company at the beginning of the year. So, as everything's going on, I think, and I hope people understand, I would love for our committee, I hope the community understand what a typical day is. Just think about your own life. But a typical day when you have 750 employees, 3,400 students, and almost 5,000 students, 3,400 families we're trying to take care of every single day. And so I'm sure there's a lot of things we can do better, but I'm going to protect and I'm going to defend our staff. I would say they're second to none. And I'm going to say about Ms. Mangiarelli, I would compare her ability as a finance director, as a financial expert to any other in the state. So, I take offense to that. So
let me be clear. My comments are not to throw anybody under the bus or anything else, but these are hard conversations to have. But the truth is that coming up, barring something that's going to happen to either vote down the budget or whatever was just passed, we're going to have to start talking about additional savings. So I'll leave it at this, is that, I would expect all my fellow members to come up with ideas on those savings and actually bring those to the floor, because we all voted on last year's budget. And I don't remember anything about anybody going into it saying these categories are too high beyond, the conversations I had directly with the administration. I don't know what other people had. So going back to Sarah, so I know that you've shored up the budget a little bit. Seeing these numbers, we've used up a little bit of this surplus for the school lunch program, which I know we've had problems with year to year. So that's my understanding, is that to just basically get us to a balanced budget this year. And the retiree benefit fund. So you're using some of those savings to basically bring us to a balanced situation, correct?
Right. Well, I'm showing how I would recommend to use that surplus. So a couple of things. One, again, this is my projection as of this point in time. As we continue to close out, as we continue to have, we still have to go through all the encumbrances. At this point, it's the end of the year. The 30th is it. We'll wipe out all encumbrances that we know we're not using at this point. There's no invoices that we're waiting on. So again, this is where I think at this point, as far as a potential area for additional savings, I just want to remind that we were operating with a governor's response of like a 2-week notice. We may have been in a different position if the governor had come out, in March and said, nope, we're virtual for the rest of the year. Things may or may not have changed how we handled things at that point. But we were every 2 weeks, are we going back? Are we not going back? So it made it hard to really completely change operations. Below that projected surplus, that is how I would recommend to the school committee to shore up some areas of the budget. We all know that the school lunch program had been carrying a deficit for a decade. This school committee may choose not to take my recommendation and say, you know what, we want to use that $200,000 for next year. We want to use that $200,000 for COVID response. We want to clean up that retiree benefit fund. The dogs are barking. So, that's my recommendation, but you as the school committee have that right to say, I don't want you to use the funds to clean it up for this fiscal year. I am recommending to try and get ourselves out of some of the holes. I know we have a huge operating hole, but we would have had that operating hole whether COVID hit or not, because we needed that 1.8 to fund basic operations before COVID hit. So, we could look, assuming we don't have to pay anything on the transportation, we could carry the 1.7 over into next year to help offset it. Just a reminder, that's still a structural deficit because we're still taking one-time savings and dumping it into next year to fund operations. So that's why I presented it. But again, some of this will come back to the school committee as to what direction or recommendations you want to take. And I understand it from both perspectives.
We're going to have some of this discussion too on the item 9 on the fiscal 21. So I'm done. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Murray. I'm sorry that I lost my internet, and so I missed a bit of that last conversation. So I saw Luke talking, but I couldn't hear him. And then when I finally got back into the meeting, I didn't have sound. So I apologize first of all, for my lousy internet, even though it's supposed to be pretty good. It's happened now. This is my second meeting that it's happened. So if I don't seem to respond and you see me leave, that's the reason why, because my internet's down. So I do apologize for that. So I really can't respond to what you said, Mr. Murray. That being said, Mr. Florio, did you have any comments?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. I agree with Mr. Pearson. We can't throw our administration under the bus on this one. Nobody expected it. We were totally caught off guard. The council gave us a commitment of $1.8 million. They have a rainy day fund of $11 million, from what I understand, and they will not fund our schools $1.8 million. I don't blame the administration. I blame the council for, quite honestly, not caring for children and families. And the proof is in the pudding here, because they're not only defunding us, they're defunding the Department of Parks and Recreation with the summer program for all our children, no matter what school they belong to. And that was brought up by Councilman Bacon. They won't even fund that program.
Dave, we're on the this is the FY20 budget though?
We're on the FY20 budget, Mr. Levis.
Right, you're talking about the FY21.
Well, no, the Parks and Rec program is not going into effect this year, am I correct? There's no Parks and Rec program for kids.
All I'm saying is we're talking about this past year and the savings.
Right.
Past year.
Well, the savings, Mr. Levis, how can we have savings when after what we went through with COVID-19? Nobody could have projected this. Nobody. And from what I see, we're getting no support from the state, the federal government, and the town is refusing to take care of its own children, its own families, to help the schools. We are part of the town budget, and when they carry an $11 million rainy day fund, and they're cutting schools, there's a problem. There's a real problem here. but that, you know, by us picking on each other and picking the pieces apart with the budget and saying we should have done this or we should have done that, we couldn't have. Nobody can project this. And I think Sarah and Lori and Don and Craig they've done everything they could to help. I mean, the town manager wouldn't even meet with Craig on Monday. He just blew him right off.
Mr. Florio, you're talking
Okay.
F-21. So
Okay.
save your angst for that discussion.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I'm just passionate about this.
I know you
That's
are. I
all.
think we all are. But we'll wait for that discussion when we get there.
Okay.
I don't have any comments except to thank Sarah for this reflection of what looks like will be what we're going to spend in 2020, even though we don't know 100% what's going to actually happen. So thank you. It gives us some insight into our spending. Mr. Levis, did you want to comment finally before we move on to the next item?
No, I just want to remind you, this is a fluid process, and you know, we don't know. I mean, tomorrow something else could transpire, and I want to remind people too. You know, we talk about, you hear little bits and pieces of ransomware. We're still working on that. We're still trying to figure that out, and you know, I think that there was a lot of conversation about the expectations of what potential savings. What this presentation isn't just about savings, it's about the budget where we stand right now. So, you know, and we come back in July 9th and we'll have a different update for that, you know, and I just want to say that the buses are on our mind. We need to figure out transportation, what we're going to have next year. And that's why we've constantly, some districts have said they're just not going to pay. And they're going to allocate this as, you know, as terms of a surplus. You know, we're trying to be extremely transparent, just let people know we need to get back to the table and figure out how we can position ourselves. You know, the last thing I'll say about this is that the federal government has said, and the governor's office is saying, we need to honor our contracts or we won't even be able to access COVID money. And we're not sure what that really means, because I believe the state had canceled their statewide bus contract. So they're telling us one thing, but they went and canceled the contract. So just understand behind the scenes what's going on. And that's just one issue, one area, the bus contract. And we have great employees, like the bus drivers. We have a great relationship. Jason, I think you brought it up, Madam Chair. Jason and Martin had worked extremely hard. So, you know, we're trying to, we keep this on our radar every single day. So understand that, you know, you're seeing a snapshot in time. This is extremely fluid also. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Levis. And I think we can move on to agenda item number 7, which is summer enrichment and skill development opportunities for all students.
Hey, Kathy, sorry to interrupt you, but are we allowing public comment on each item, or are we?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all, just
Yeah,
a point of order.
Mr., you know, without seeing everybody on the line, it makes me forget. So, Mr. Murphy, do you see anybody with a raised hand?
Yes, there is one person. I'm going to bring them in now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you are in the call. Please identify yourself and your address.
Hi, everybody. I am Lori LaPerch. I have 2 kids that go to Coventry. One is in the high school and one is in elementary. Can you hear me okay? I have a pair of earbuds in.
Yep.
Sarah, I love your numbers. I do have a question on the budget for next year. Do you have a projection of your savings of the $995,000? If that number does not get paid for the bus transportation, say it rolls over and it pays off and it cleans out everything and brings Coventry up to date, everything's zero, does that leave a surplus to be used next year in 2021? And where would that be?
Yes, so actually on that budget presentation, Jim, can you put that back up on the screen for me, please?
Give me just a moment, please.
Yep, thanks. So Lori, while he's pulling that up, the long and short of it is yes. From as soon as COVID started and we started doing budget projections, we had said all along that any savings from this year should be carried over to next year, specifically to respond to the requirements that we would need to implement for COVID. With the town proposing to level fund us by the 1.8 million, that 1.8 million ask came into fruition before COVID even happened. That was to keep operations as they were pre-COVID in continuance for next year. So the issue that we're running into is while we will have a surplus, so if you look, I'm showing a $1.7 million surplus, and then there's 380,000, that 200,000 and that 180,000 that I'm recommending we don't carry over into next year to clean up some other areas of the budget. But the balance, that 998,000 and that 345,000, I would recommend that we carry that over to 2021. But I recommended that that be used for COVID response. The town cutting us the 1.8 is cutting the operations that exist before COVID. So to kind of give you a little bit of a breakdown, as of right now for FY21, and I know we're jumping at the FY21, but I won't answer this in the next time, but going into 2021, as it stands now, I have a budget gap of 1.8 million from our originally recommended budget for next year. We will receive $747,000 from the federal government next year, and we will look to bring over about $1.3 million in savings from this fiscal year. But that 1.3 million plus that 747,000 has to first dig us out of the hole of 1.8 million by the level funded budget that the council just approved. So in short, we could fund normal operations next year with our carryover. Where I'm concerned is that we will not have the funds available as it stands at the moment to respond to all of the requirements that we have to adhere to open our school. So I'm looking at, between the carryover that we're going to have from this year and the federal money that we're going to receive next year, only about $287,000 to use for COVID response. And that's where we have the biggest concern for FY21. Does that answer your question?
It just leads me to another question.
Yeah.
How open, and I don't think this is, I think this involves the entire panel, but I'm not sure who would lead it. Who do the drivers need to speak to in order to throw out their ideas for the ones that do drive? I am a driver for Coventry, so I have a million ideas and solutions, but I understand we have to go through certain protocols, and I understand there's a lot of money that's involved, but how can I voice my opinion or my ideas to you, to the panel, instead of on here? Because it's, I love this idea, but there's so many and we all have a lot of ideas that not one is better than the other and not one is worse, but how do we make sure that we as drivers are heard for, like a solution base instead of we just have to follow the protocol? Because if we're the ones doing it, we might be able to say to you, hey, Sarah, we know where we can save you some money, and we know where we can save the town some money. So how do we work together for that?
Well, really, even outside of this COVID response, I would honestly encourage any taxpayer that has an idea for savings or wants to sit down or understand a certain part of the budget better. My contact information is on the district's website. I'm more than happy to meet with anybody or to answer questions through email. And absolutely, if you have ideas, they can come through me. We're also going to talk about the task force that we have. Shortly, I know Jason Martin is on the resource group of that task force, and transportation is one of those areas. So you can also share with Jason Martin, he's the director of transportation for us. And I'm sure the committee would welcome any any, suggestions that you have as well. And then they would probably end up down at administration level to kind of cost those out and review them.
Figured
Yeah,
I was in
if
the
I-
wrong area. Oops, sorry.
I'm sorry,
Luke.
Luke Murray. And if I could throw a block in for Sarah, because I know Sarah's extremely busy. But if you obviously live in Coventry, identify your committee member and funnel your comments through them would be, I'm sure, helpful and appreciated. So we can certainly forward your comments on and correspond. That's part of our job is, constituent service. So, but we appreciate the fact that you want to help.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Sarah.
Thank you all for that discussion. Jim, do you see any more hands raised before we move on?
That's the only one I saw.
All right, thank you so much. So I guess we can move on to number 7, the summer enrichment and skill program opportunities. So Mr. Levis, did you want to start that?
No, I just want to turn it over to Don. I want to thank all the administration that's been working extremely hard. And we've talked about this before publicly with the committee about not only ending the year, but also making sure that we provide opportunities for all students. So, we have extended school year program for students that are identified as requiring specialized instruction, and that's a process unto itself. But Don's going to talk about opportunities that we have for all other students. So I'll turn it over to Don.
Good evening, everybody. We started talking about this probably in May, once we knew we were in the final stretch of distance learning, and knowing from feedback that there were probably going to be students who weren't as successful in distance learning as they would have been if they were in school in front of a teacher in a regular classroom setting. So we started having this conversation fairly early on. And so we started looking at some different data sources, trying to determine how we wanted to approach this problem, over the summer in terms of getting us ready for next year. So, all the schools had communication logs. They kept track of when they reached out to families and when they reached out to students, and were able to have conversations with families about students who were struggling. More often than not, the students that were identified as being struggling students were students that also struggled when we were in school. It's just been magnified because now we're in distance learning. So we have STAR data from the beginning and the middle of the year to kind of back up those concerns brought forward. Every teacher had their own classroom assessments. They may not have been as robust as they would have been in a classroom setting, but they did have their own assessment data. They had anecdotal data through observations that took place when they were delivering instruction through their meetings. And then they also have lists of students who actively participated in distance learning and who had regular attendance. And if you start looking at that data altogether, some of those kids that we have had some difficulty, who had difficulty through distance learning, were also kids that had trouble participating and had irregular attendance. So all that data together kind of led us to the point that there were going to be a portion of our population that was going to need some help. In terms of STAR, we chose not to give STAR in the spring for a variety of reasons, and I'll go over them quickly. But the first one, the number one reason, was Renaissance, the company that owns and brings STAR to us, actually recommended against us giving STAR in a remote setting. There's a lot of variables that you can't control when you give an assessment like that at home. An assessment like that is usually monitored closely. The environment that the student in is created in a way so kids can be successful. And not everybody has the same environment at home and the same conditions to be successful. So there was that concern. We were also worried about security, who was taking the tests, and if we had data that was inconsistent with, previous data points, were we going to be concerned that there might have been some kids who were cheating or kids who were working together on that? Not that we think that in all cases, but we have little control when students take an assessment at home, which makes the assessment invalid. But the biggest thing is, because we're having these conversations in May, that's when students really started showing some stress and anxiety through distance learning. That's when, you know, people were starting to fade. And as a district and as a leadership team, we were thinking that putting an assessment on the students at that point would probably push some people over the edge, some families over the edge, because it's a whole new thing for them. They were very comfortable with the learning platform we put in place, but these parents who worked very, very hard with their kids have no experience giving a STAR assessment. And to put that on them would be, I think, the final nail. And we really didn't want to do that to people in the final stretch. So we did not give STAR. I did meet with the Department of Ed, by the way, because there's a few people up there that I've worked with through the years on a few different assessments. And I had a nice call with them in terms of the reason why we didn't give STAR, because it wasn't mandated, but they did ask us if it was something we were considering, and some other options. And so they're working to come up with some solutions for next year around assessment, something that they could run through the state level that all students in the state would participate in. So recognizing that kids also need a summer, right? So these students have been indoors in front of a screen since March 13th, all the way into the end of the year. We know for everybody's well-being, social, emotional, physical, you need to have a break. And for many of them, they need to be out from in front of a screen, and they need to be outside, and they need to have those opportunities. So we didn't want to create anything that would take away anybody's opportunity to have a break, because we know, that could make things worse before it makes it better. But we tried to create a continuum of opportunities that people could access. Some being very, very flexible and being choice driven, and some being a little bit more structured. So the first thing I did when we had that initial conversation is I tried to curate a list of free resources that families could access. They're all internet based, because right now the way the environment is, distance learning is still really how they're going to learn over the summer. We're not pulling in groups of kids. So I tried to find resources that families could access, use. They're all free, and they could use it at their own pace, their own way. And some of them are more enrichment and fun, and some of them are more skill-based and would provide kids practice. And those would be available to everybody. So I already put that list together. It's on our website. It was shared on social media, and I sent it out through email. So it's been blasted on all our platforms. So everybody got that probably, I sent it out a week ago, I think 2 weeks ago. Department of Ed also created an opportunity for our secondary kids. It's called the SAIL program. It's a combination of two different things, and many of our kids have accessed that as well. There's the Advanced Course Network, which allows kids to take courses free of charge. And often those courses can be used for credit towards their coursework at the high school. Some of the courses also can be used towards college credit. My daughter, for example, took one last year. She took a criminal science forensics type course with Roger Williams University, and she got 3 college credits for it. And that's something that Department of Ed puts together. Department of Ed also put together this program in SAIL where they are offering opportunities for kids to take summer courses in math and ELA for grades 6 to, I think it's 6 to 12. It could be 9 to 12, but I'm pretty sure it's 6 to 12. And they're actually paying kids to participate in this opportunity. So kids who get in, and I'm not going to sugarcoat, there is a preference to certain students in certain communities that are probably needier than ours. So, you know, when you look at the urban core, I think some of those kids are probably going to have a better chance of getting in than our kids. But not to say our kids won't have a chance. I'm just saying there's a wide audience of people. There's no college credit. There's no credit towards their transcript at the high school, but it is an opportunity for kids to try to recoup skills that they may have lost during school. And I think, you know, paying them is a big motivator. I want to say a student can get $250 per class. And I think if they take a number of classes, they can cap out at $750, which is, for a student, that could be quite the motivator. It could be a motivator for me. So that was something that Department of Ed put together, which I thought was, worth sharing. Donna Bowden at the high school, she and I communicated with each other last week. We had a phone call and an email. A number of our kids have actually tried to access that program and have tried to get into it. And she knows that because through the registration process, they have to identify the district and the district gets a notification. So many of our kids are trying to get into it, which shows, a motivation to, get some skills and maybe get a little bit of pocket change while they're at it. The other thing that we did, and I worked with Sarah on this, I had brought it to Craig and Lori as well, is, many of our students used IXL successfully during distance learning. We had purchased originally, before distance learning even started, grades 3 to 8 ELA and math, and the teachers use it a lot. It's not a replacement to the curriculum. It's definitely supplementing the curriculum, but it's skill-based and skill-oriented. During distance learning, the people at IXL gave that to us free, and they gave us a portion of it free so we could expand up and down into kindergarten and up into 12th grade. So our high school kids and our younger kids had access to it, and they did that for free. But that all good things come to an end. And many teachers reached out and asked about that program. And then when I reached out to IXL, I asked them about access to the program and to the platform during the summer. And they said, if we get onto a contract, it's not actually a new contract, it's a revision of an old contract, and expand our enrollment, our kids can actually access their IXL program all summer long. And because they've been in IXL, it's already customized to where they were in terms of their mastery skill development. So we're putting that together now. That's not 100% complete. Sarah and I just kind of wrapped it up last week, and I have to upload a file into the system and so forth. And I actually haven't even communicated that out yet, because I know once you communicate something out, people want to jump on it, and it's not ready for that to happen yet. And I don't want to have people get frustrated with that. And the special ed department also, and I think Lori might have been part of this, they created a 7-week structured literacy distance learning program. It's a targeted program for 30 IEP students. I really had no involvement in the development of it, but it is part of our menu of options that we're trying to create for kids in this continuum of support. So there's a number of kids who are going to be able to get a 7-week structured literacy program that's going to address literacy needs. And I think many kids will benefit from that. And as long as they enroll and participate, I think that's something that we can potentially duplicate year over year. And then the last thing, which is sort of still in the build phase, is Craig and I and Lori, we were talking about having some students in a ramp up program, something that we could have them participate in that's more structured than free choice based on what free will or parent participation or money from Department of Ed. So we're going to build something. I'm probably going to use IXL as the foundation, but we have some other things that we're looking at as well, and we'll probably have some teachers monitor that program, because when you have teachers involved, you can make sure there's a structure in place, there's monitoring, there's checking in, and there's assignment of tasks to students. That will not happen probably until the end of July into August, because like I said earlier, we want to make sure kids have a break. They need a break. And it will be asynchronous, meaning that the kids would be able to do it on their own time. They don't have to do it at a particular time of day. It's very similar to how we did distance learning. And we'll have a few teachers monitor the progress. And hopefully that will help kids build on some skills so that when they come back in late August, early September, I'm not going to say they're going to be completely caught up, because there's always regression over the summer, but at least we'll put our best foot forward and best effort to try to get kids what they need so they can be successful and continue along their educational path. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's no fancy presentation. It's just a continuum of things that we were working on that the superintendent asked me to share with you folks. As we get further along, I could come back and give you an update, but as of now, that's what we're building out.
Very nice. Thank you, Don. It was very good information. I was kind of curious as to what we were offering. Mr. Pearson, did you have any questions or comments for Mr. Cowett?
No, just good work, and thank you to everyone involved in putting this together. Hopefully this will help with some of the lag we may have had with the distance learning, and make sure we don't have students who are too far behind when we start school again in the fall or late summer. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mrs. Colonian?
It was good work. Thanks. And, you know, I look forward to seeing how these programs progress in the fall, to see, you know, if they've helped and all of that. But thank you. You've done a lot of work here. Good job.
Thank you, Mrs. Colonian. Mr. Murray?
Thanks, Don. I wish somebody paid me $250 a class to take college, right? Certainly an incentive. I did have a lot of experience with IXL with my son, and it's a great platform. He liked Prodigy a lot too. So I think it's definitely beneficial. One of the things and this is just a thought on the incentives. I know they have, like Mrs. A, you know, she has the book reading. You read so many books, and that's at the middle school too. You read so many books, and they have a product. Like creating some incentives for kids, because I know especially my son is difficult to get him to do schoolwork in the school year. Trying to say to do schoolwork in the summer is, you know, a little bit of a heavy lift, which is why he likes Prodigy, because it's more like a video game. But, you know, having something where when you get back into the school year, there's maybe some sort of, you know, it doesn't take much to motivate small kids. That's just a thought. But I think having options, a menu of options for both parents and students to select from, and having also the incentive, maybe getting that college credit, I think is a huge incentive for the secondary. So I appreciate the work. Anything you do to keep getting innovative, to motivate during the summer. Again, another example of how this technology and some of the benefits coming out of this crisis are, we've already heard no snow days, which I don't know if that's a benefit or not, but I think being able to reduce some of the summer slide, I think would definitely help. So appreciate the work.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's great to have good news done.
I know.
It's great. It is. It really is. It's, you know, things have been going so tough lately. I mean, it's just good to have great news. And thank you so much, and thank you for your dedication and what you do, because it would have been a tough night, Don, but this is good news. Thank you so much.
Well, I got to tell you, I get worried going after Sarah. I mean,
it can't be worse than mine, so.
I know, but
Thank you, Mr. Florio. And yes,
Welcome, Madam
John,
Chair.
this was great news. I did have one question, and that was when I've watched the governor's, you know, briefings, I did hear something about students signing up for some programs, but I don't think she mentioned that they actually got some incentive in the form of monetary incentive. So that's interesting to actually hear that from you. So wow. Like you say, it's that I'm very glad that we've got a bunch of students across the state that are utilizing the funding. And I assume, is the funding coming from maybe COVID funding to the state? Do you have any idea where?
I have no idea where that funding is coming from. I was surprised, to be honest with you. I pleasantly surprised for our kids, but I had no idea where the funding's coming from. One thing I did neglect to say, and I didn't want to forget to mention it, is one of the things that we are using to make sure we target this is I had each principal and their team compile sort of a soft list of students that would potentially benefit from a ramp up program, so we can be very targeted. And then once the special ed department built out their structured literacy, they sent me their roster so that we don't duplicate. You know, we try to give opportunities to people and not to, you know, flood the same kids with too many things, because that could be overwhelming as well.
You know, I give everybody a lot of credit for working on this, because you know, folks out in the community are used to the summer school offerings, ESL. And so, oh no, it's not that. I forget what
ESY.
it's called. The ESY, that's right. So this was a nice option. I mean, the only one we really have right now. So thank you again to the team for working on this and allowing kids to have something if they want to get on board. And as you know, the summer slide is bad enough, even when we do offer programs on the site-based. So having some remote ability is great.
And one of the things, if you get a chance to go on the website and look at the free ones I've compiled, New York City compiled a whole program that's free. I mean, I accessed it, so I shared it out to our community. It's got books and audio and all kinds of things embedded in the program. So when I met with the people from RIDE, I said, are we going to put together anything at the state level that we could share out? Because, you know, we're one little community in the state, and I'm sure lots of people are doing the same work I'm doing in their own community. It would be nice if at the state level they built something out similar to what New York had built out, and allow it's just a nice little package that people could access, and it would create some equity across the state so that, you know, kids had access to things that they needed.
Yeah, that's a great idea. What was their response?
They were actually kind of surprised. They were like, no, we don't actually have anything like that. And I said, well, I'm working on something like that. Maybe, you know, we could start putting something together.
Yeah, another feather in the cap of Coventry.
Right.
You guys do an awesome job. Okay, so Mr. Murphy, are there any questions from our audience? Any raised hands?
There are no raised hands.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, thank you for everyone for working on that summer enrichment program. Sounds like it's an awesome. I'm going to have to go on and take a look myself. Maybe I can learn something. Moving on to number 8, which is the reentry planning update. It was our reference number 6. Mr. Levis, I'm sure you have some
Sure.
thoughts to share with us.
Right, so I just want to let you know that we put documents, the documents I share with the school committee, there are reference documents are on our website and under COVID-19 link that's right on the top of our homepage. But Mr. Murphy and myself, which means really Mr. Murphy, we're going to create a separate homepage just for our reentry planning. We want to make sure that we're as transparent as we can be. We're going to put all of our documents there, and as we start to populate our plans, we will have that information there. So, you know, we received guidance from the Department of Education last Friday. We had our task force meeting, just an introduction. We had almost 50 individuals last night, and really it was just kind of framing the work in terms of their advisory role, all disciplines. And you know, that document again is on our website. You can see the individuals. We're also going to at some point break it down into individual schools, because every school is different, even though we're going to have some guiding principles and some, you know, in terms of like sanitation procedures. We'll talk about transportation, how we're going to set up classrooms. That's going to have to be by building. And so there'll be opportunities. People have emailed me, and we're going to put people in different groups as we continue this planning. You know, we have to have a plan that's submitted by July 17th. So at our next school committee meeting, we'll give you an update of where we're at on July 9th. And there's many, we're coming at this from multiple angles. The superintendents that work with AFT unions, we have agreed that we're going to align. We're not going to get ourselves into situations like we did with the graduation. And you saw that was kind of a fiasco, putting district against district. So we had a meeting, myself and actually Mr. Fognoli, Joe Fognoli, the vice president, met a couple weeks ago. Yesterday, myself and the president, Mrs. Aronakis, we met with other superintendents and union leaders, and we've kind of come up with, you know, RIDE wants 3 scenarios, and we've come up with an agreement that the 3 scenarios are going to be a distance learning, a hybrid model, which might have students in different days, or, you know, we'll have to develop how that looks. And then most students in with accommodate with some type of modifications, obviously around safety. And so we're going to be working on that. We also are working, and I shared an email, the state has hired this district management group. They're a consulting firm out of Boston, and they do a lot of work with education, with districts. In fact, we were partnering with Smithfield. Smithfield had received a grant through an organization, and they had offered 7 districts to work with them. So we had a meeting set up, and it was actually a meeting the week of the March 16th. And what the purpose of that was to find some like projects or needs that districts had, and have this group help us find solutions to those needs. So we're going to be working with them, a small group, including myself, has a Zoom meeting with them on Monday. And obviously we have our task force that will be working next week. We're breaking up into our 3 subgroups, which is I'm facilitating communication and leadership. Don is facilitating instructional core and social emotional learning. And Lori is facilitating operation and resources. So again, we'll be doing a lot of work outside of these meetings, bringing it back. But I think if you look at the list, we have a real strong group. I have invited, someone from the town hall to attend, but we have a fire chief, we have our resource officers, we have Bob Robillard from Department of Human Services, and I'm sure I'm going to forget people I don't want to name, but we have people from several organizations that we partner with. We have our nurses are very involved, social workers, psychologists are very involved, because we know social emotional well-being and we know physical well-being are going to drive this. And that's our, number one driving force is going to be safety. And what we're going to do is Sarah had created some great spreadsheets in terms of looking at how we cost this out. So our process is, we're not going to say, well, we can't do this because we don't have the money. We're going to plan out all these different scenarios and cost them out. And, again, we don't know, will there be another stimulus package? We'll talk about our current situation, the next agenda item. So, we're also sending out, I know it's delayed, but wanted to see what the guidance was. Some districts had sent out surveys, and now they have to backpedal based on some guidance. So survey will go out, I believe, tomorrow to both families and to our staff, because we need their input. So there's a lot of work.
The family survey went out tonight, and there's already 514 responses.
Let's start tabulating those, Don, please. So that's good.
I just finished.
That's very encouraging. So, based on some other surveys we've sent out, and again, I think this whole process, everybody is having conversations, but the feedback that we've had, again, this has been challenging, but the feedback we've had is that people appreciate the communication and the honesty. I think that's a common theme. People want answers. They want answers, and I understand that. But sometimes the answer is we don't know. But as soon as we know, we'll let you know. And I think we're engaging the community in this process. We'll talk about it the next, but, we couldn't have done this without our community. This is not a top-down agenda. Our job, and I hope people understand, we have July 17th, this is due. So we are going to do a lot of the work behind the scenes to get this done, but we want the feedback. I had a gentleman call me yesterday, and he's a parent. I hope he doesn't mind me saying it, but it's Tim Kenny. He's a parent, but he's also doing his PhD on distance learning. So he called me yesterday, or sent me an email, I should say, and says, hey, I'm doing this PhD. Can I be of any service? And I just said, like, capital yes with exclamation. And so we have a policy draft. He's working on it. I made a copy of them. So, we have great people in this community, and we need all hands on deck. So this is a work in progress. We will create that homepage, right, Mr. Murphy? And we will populate it and try to put put the information up there so people can see the progress. We're going to have to make some tough decisions, and again, just because we submit a plan or multiple scenarios July 17th, I want the community to understand that things could change July 18th. And we'll get feedback from the Department of Ed and the Department of Health, and then they'll give us like a week, and then we'll go back and revise it. But things could change August 25th. And I think we need to understand that. And even if we get back into school, say we're fortunate to get ourselves all back into school with all these safety measures, in a week, we could find ourselves back into distance learning. It's just our reality. So what this part is, we want to make sure we do things better. We know this was thrown at us and we had a couple of weeks, and a testament to our community is that our students, our teachers, our families, our administrators, we had a philosophy around reflection, and we revised. And so when we received feedback, we didn't dig our heels in and say, no, this is the plan. Everybody listened to the feedback and we modified. And, I think that's something that we'll continue to do with these plans. So we want the community to understand where we're going with this. I'm excited that we actually have superintendents that are saying we're going to work together, because what happens is we say that, then all of a sudden we get a little pressure, political pressure here or pressure here, and then we go off on our own. And then we end up defending our position with our colleagues or with other communities. And so I'm excited that we'll be working together. So we'll have information up probably early next week on the website. It's already up, what I've shared with the committee, but as we start the planning process more in depth, we'll share results of our survey. We'll put all that together. So I think the theme here has to be communication and patience and reflection. So I've rambled on enough. I will mute myself.
Thank you, Ms. Levis. That's wonderful to hear. And I'm so glad you've got so many participants, because you're right. This has to come from the community as well. It can't just be top down, so that people will buy into it, or at least have their voice, and they'll be able to voice their concerns about any future plans that we do.
And we didn't make it, I just want to be clear, and I think, Mr. Pearson brought this up last time, I believe it was Mr. Pearson, but we didn't make this political, right? We're looking at, not that that's a bad thing to get people that are involved, but I think we've made this really grassroots, people that their feet are on the ground and running. So I think that's important. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Mr. Pearson, did you have any questions or comments about this particular issue?
Thank you for doing this work. This is difficult work, and also understanding, you have 3 weeks left to do it. So let's wrap up this call as quickly as we can so you can get back to work on this planning.
And a wedding to attend next Wednesday.
Oh yeah, no kidding. They didn't give us much time. They didn't give us much guidance. Sorry to criticize the state right now. Actually, no, I'm not. I am looking forward to seeing how this all plays out and starting to attach some, price tags. But as you said, things could change August 25th. I received an email from URI today. They've set the expectations for students returning to URI, and they've already said, hey, after Thanksgiving break, we're virtual learning no matter what. So they're going to start in-person classes in the beginning of the semester, then switch to virtual learning for the winter, anticipating, I guess, something is going to happen around that time period. So whatever plans we have in place, we can probably anticipate to be using one or all of them at some point, depending on what the situation is. And I think being prepared is the most important thing. So these exercises, getting the community feedback, is really an exercise in preparation and making sure we put the right foot forward and when we're ready for things. However, along with that comes my favorite phrase in Rhode Island, unfunded mandates, because that's what some of these things are going to become. And I think at some point over the summer, when we start to understand the associated costs with these plans, I think it's incumbent upon us to start pushing back on the state and the Department of Health and say, put your money where your mouth is. We want safety for our employees and our students. Funding it ourselves may or may not be possible depending on the scope of what we have to put in place. We're going to need support from the state, possibly the federal government. So again, good work. Thank you. And I know you're going to be very busy for the next 3 weeks. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, I'm glad we've had such an easy go over the last 3 months, so that now we can really hit the ground running, right? No, you're right. I mean, I think we are going to cost it out, and we know. I mean, Sarah had sent out an article that came from her national association that basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but without federal funding, I think, and again, tell me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but basically schools can't open without some supplement budget from the federal government, because we're not throwing numbers out to scare people. It's just the reality. We shared that document with you. But I don't want to use that as a barrier. When we've had conversations with some of our colleagues that they're saying like, well, transportation is going to be too expensive, so we got to just do distance learning. We're not doing that, and I think you'll be, just the conversation we had yesterday with the superintendents, it was really, when you bring all these people together, and it was just really a vibrant conversation and really narrowing down to some situations we think are going to be feasible. But, as you said, it always comes down to money. So, and safety is going to drive this, and then we'll make some tough decisions. But anyways, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Mrs. Kalunian, any questions, concerns, comments?
No, actually, you've done a really good job. I was reviewing the documents and everything, and I know it's a lot of work. And I do appreciate it, and I'm sure the rest of my colleagues do also. And as a school committee member and as a community partner in Coventry, so I do appreciate it. I know you've done a lot of work. I know, this is not the way anyone wants to spend their summer. But again, I just want to thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Murray.
Thank you. So thank you. I don't know what I actually can lend to this effort as a school committee person or a parent. I'm looking through the document. I've already read through it once. And the state guidance, just like it's been through this process, is fairly broad. I guess with some intention, but I can see down the road, this happened earlier, that when the plans come down, they'll say they want flexibility, and then they'll start torquing the screws and saying you have to go a certain direction. So I hope I know you're ready for it. I know you'll do great. I know the task force, I appreciate you getting it together in such short notice. Right now it's time to grind it out, I guess, and come up with the plans. And then as far as funding goes, we'll see where the chips fall. That's going to be partially falling on the school committee to figure it out and patch the holes and make sure we can work it out. But sounds like you got a great team. So I wish you the best. If there's anything I can do as a member, let me know.
I just want to make one comment about the guidance. I think if you've read it, you see there's some areas that are conflicting. What we've decided to do, at least with the superintendents that I worked with yesterday, is we need to figure out what part of that document's really going to drive what we do. I mean, if you read the document, it says, gives you all these things, well, do this and do this, then do this. But then it says like, but if you can't do that, then just have everybody wear a mask, right? And if you look at the model classroom, like they don't exist in Coventry. We don't have classrooms that size. So we're going to pick, not cherry pick, but we're going to go in there and pick where we feel is it's realistic, and use that consistently so that we're not, again, not in conflict. But we've also sent a document off to the governor's office, Department of Ed, because there was a lot of clarifying questions we needed. We haven't received the responses yet. And I can share that with individuals too, with the community when that comes back. The last thing I want to say, this August 31st date, Department of Health wanted school to start August 15th because they're concerned of what Mr. Pearson brought up. That's why URI is, in a lot of places are thinking by the November break, if we can get to November break and then take a break during the flu season, then have a chance of coming back. That's what the experts are saying. So it was a lot of push that we heard to even get it to August 31st. And they're not backing down from those coastal communities that, like Block Island, Jamestown, Narragansett, that want that summer to extend because businesses are concerned they won't have the high school students. And the Department of Health and the governor isn't backing down. So and that was the whole idea with the state calendar that we approved. because they wanted, if schools close down, they have to shut the state down. They want us all to be kind of on the same page. So just for further clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Okay, are you finished, Mr. Murray?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Florio?
Great job. It's exactly what we discussed. That I like the idea that you're getting people from the community to sit on the panel, people who have kids in the schools, teachers, administrators, whole range of individuals that have knowledge and comprehension of the schools. And I wish you the best, because we're all going to have to deal with this. And I'm really surprised. I didn't know that was happening at URI. I only knew that from what I got from the Rhode Island School Committee Association, that in one of those communications, that the average community is spending and they're not the size of Coventry. They have to spend 1.741 million to get ready for the school year. And it's a lot of money, and we don't have it. So, Mr. Levis, you're doing yeoman work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. And my only comment is that I know it's a huge undertaking. The only thing that I feel good about and I'm encouraged by is that so many people have come to the table and that people are collaborating across districts, because that only makes sense. So instead of trying to wait to see what's going to work the best, having those people all come together, the superintendents, principals, obviously, colleagues across the state thinking out of the box. That's basically the only way we're going to get this done, by sharing ideas and trying to come up with, obviously, the contingency plans. Because, and knowing that no matter what we come up with could change in a New York second. And so, I mean, obviously, our priority is to keep our kids safe and our employees safe as well. So that's going to be a huge undertaking. And, you know, I wish the three committees, you know, they've got their work cut out for them, and I wish them the very best. I look forward to seeing what the plans ultimately look like and how we proceed, because I know there's 3 different levels, and what happens in the different levels will determine how we actually get all the kids back. I'm a little nervous thinking that we will really be able to do that. I would have felt more comfortable thinking that we would get most of our kids back. So it'll be interesting to see what the schedule looks like. If we can alternate some kids going to school, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, other kids Tuesday, Thursday, and the following Monday. I'm not sure how it'll work out, but the density of the children in some of these classrooms is going to have to be considered. And and that's the only way we're going to be able to do it when you look at what we have for facilities in Coventry. But I agree. I think that, you know, you're up for the task. I will again say the same thing that Mrs. Kalunian said, that we really, truly, as a school committee, appreciate the, instead of, you know, having your summer project work that you would normally do at this time of year, maybe even take vacation or do work that's been on the back burner that, you know, is sort of like a little pet project, whatever. It's not like you guys don't work in the summer, but now you're really working. So we really, truly appreciate that. And I do hope that all of you do get a chance to get some kind of vacation, even if it's not the kind that you're, you know, like a long stretch. Because I know you're all going to kind of be on call to answer questions and try to figure out this plan. So that's it from me. Ms. Murphy, do you see anybody with a hand raised?
Yes, we have 2. I'm going to bring the first person on.
Thank you.
Okay, just identify yourself and your address.
Jim, is it me?
Yeah, it's Kim. It's you, Kim.
Thank you. Kim Sturtle. I wasn't sure if I was on or not. I guess I'm not sure if this is a comment or a question. I watched the town meeting on Monday night or Tuesday night, whatever night that was, and they kind of disregarded everything that Dr. Dixon said. I was just wondering, I know that Craig said that somebody from Town Hall was asked to be on the committee. Has anybody thought about asking the town council members to be on the committee so they can see exactly what kind of pressure and how the state is not giving us a lot of timeline? And maybe they'll understand why we can't do what we have to do with the money that we have or we don't have.
I don't know if I can respond. You know, Kim, and I think it was the point I made before, you know, my direct connection is with the town manager or a designee. And I feel that there should be plenty of communication, and I'm sure they will. We didn't have anybody yet, but we'll have a member definitely from the town. I'm sure it'll either be Mr. Wazika or a designee. But I feel that, you know, we can share. And if we can't, if the message, information can't get, like if the school committee doesn't feel that I'm an effective and accurate reporter, then that's a huge issue, right? And that information should get back to them. And I feel the same way, and it should happen the same way in the town. And I'm not saying it doesn't. So to me, I don't want to do something and have somebody there just so they can, you know, like firsthand experience. I feel I'm a professional, right? And my profession is in the people business, and it's in community business, building community. And so I think the makeup we have is exactly what, you know, and I think you hear the school committee saying that. This is what should take place with all the different stakeholders that have a vested interest in. And we have Fire Chief Frank Brown, who's a phenomenal resource in terms of, you know, incident command and the EMA, and oversees several of the fire districts. So we have people that are investing their time in this process and going to give us great advice. So I'm more than willing to sit with any council member to explain this reentry process, or anybody from the town or anybody. So, you know, I think
I'm sorry. I'm not disagreeing with you at all, Craig. I'm just saying, you know, now knowing that Ed Wazika, he basically came right out and said he only has about 60 days left.
Right.
And I just don't want, I'm sick of hearing how the schools aren't telling us stuff. I know you're telling them. I hear you tell them. It's just, I guess I'm sick of being level funded and sick of them always pointing the fingers at us.
So the last thing I'll say, Kim, is that to me, A, that's another issue. B, my responsibility here, and I say my responsibility, it's through everybody else. I mean, the reason this, and Don, look at Don said, we just sent it out. We had 500 some odd responses because there's been an incredible partnership within our school community at all levels. And that's carrying over into this process. You know, we're going to make sure that we address the fear that people have. Nobody's talking about, there's going to be a lot of fear about sending kids in. We're going to have a constant distance learning component. Because in Europe, if you look at what's transpired in Europe, after 3 or 4 weeks, parents kept their children home. And then when they saw what was going on with the other students, they send them in, right? So, but I feel that, you know, I've got to leave the politics up other people. You know, I'm going to be as transparent as the superintendent as I can be, and you know, say it like it is, as respectfully as I can be. But my responsibility are families and students. And you know, like I said, if a town council member wants to call me and said they'd like to come to a meeting, I'll send them an invite and they're possible. But my focus right now has to be on working with everybody else to get this plan done. So I appreciate your comment. I think it makes a lot of sense, but you know, they know how to get in touch with me, and I more than welcome people to do that. So
I understand too. All right,
Kim,
go ahead, sorry.
No, that's okay. Look, Marie, the other thing I want to interject, because again, people forget that we're actually a school committee here, and it doesn't all fall on the superintendent to do all of this. That, you know, we can reach out to the council people as well, and we should be. And, you know, I need dialogue with Dr. Dixon from my district and keep her aware of things. That is part of my job. And you're absolutely correct. You know, we may or may not be doing our individual jobs here. The other thing, and I'll just ask the superintendent, we've been traditionally giving updates at council meetings. You know, perhaps maybe asked to be on the agenda to provide an update on this scenario. in the very near future, because I think they do need to know where we stand on this, because this is a, we can come in as a panelist in one of their meetings and provide an update. It doesn't have to fall. I mean, I don't know who does that, but we typically give an update on where we're at on broader issues. And I do think the point's taken that regardless if they want to reach out or not, we need to put the information in front of them and whoever's watching that we're making the effort to take the high road on this. And that's my own personal opinion. I don't know how others feel about it, but we need to take a leadership role on this and not wait for, because I'm done waiting for council. I'm done. So, if we want to take the high road as a committee and present the data, and if they want to ignore it, it's on them. So I don't know how others feel about that, but I'm putting it out there.
Thank you, Luke. That's basically what I was trying to say in a long way, and you drove it right home straightforward. So thank you.
Nice. I mean, do any other members have a feeling about that?
I do. I agree with you 100%.
I think your next, sorry, I get confused here for a second. I agree that that communication is utmost. I'm not sure, I don't want to be cynical, but I think those of us who have sat on negotiations, for example, when there's been a town council partner who has agreed and sat there during the negotiations and then later has not been supportive. So just because someone sits at a meeting doesn't necessarily mean that the support will go the way you would expect it to go. But I agree, Kim, it can't hurt. And maybe we do need to, Luke, reinstate the school committee.
It was based more about communication.
Donna, do you have something?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to just, and Luke, you're very lucky because
I'm on mute.
Your council person is a person that listens. When you have a council person that basically, you can talk to you blue in the face and they don't hear you, so I see where you're very lucky in that regard, that you have a council person that will listen to what you say and, have a dialogue with you.
No, I appreciate that. Listen, I am lucky. Dr. Dixon's, she has an interesting perspective. I'm just saying, regardless of their individual roles to reach out, putting it out in the open, in the public, I think, whether they choose to listen or not is one thing, but I think the public needs to know we're making all efforts to step up and provide that information, right? We're being open and transparent. And I think there's also a different contingency who maybe watches council versus school committee, right? We know that. I think stepping up at those meetings and conveying that information and showing we're trying to do the outreach, they can choose not to listen. That's fine. But I don't want us to be accused of not conveying that information, not being honest. We've said that all along. Craig, you've said it over and over again. We want to be honest and transparent, right? We want to be the example. And I think that's part of it. And again, that's my personal opinion.
We have been, though. I mean, and again, I don't want to take away from Ms. Patino here being the chair. So I just want to say that we have been open and honest with everything we've done. I believe that we have. And, and I'm, just, as my role, like there's a difference between me inviting somebody to these task force versus sharing this information with them. I mean, we will definitely share with them. If the committee wants that, then I'm all for that. But I feel that I can sit here tonight and say, and we've been extremely transparent with all of our information, and we continue to do that. And we've had conversations about the cost and the additional costs. And again, though, I've got to be positive because I got to keep moving forward and keep this, because there's going to be a lot of doom and gloom, especially when we get into our next topic, but through that all, we're still going to persevere because we have. There's nothing that we haven't overcome as a community, at least since I've been here. It's been painful, but we'll get through this. And there may be a lot of pain before we get through it. But
so to the point, how do we make this happen? I mean, is this something we need to, Madam Chair, can you maybe reach out to the council president, see if we can get on the agenda for an update on this?
I mean, it was on I was thinking about it actually just recently, wondering whether or not we should ask to be on the agenda. So I think because of the uncertainness of our Zoom meetings and whatever, we kind of fell off the agenda, but we can certainly do that again. So I will definitely contact Mr. McGee.
I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem. I believe there was another hand raised, Mr. Murphy.
Yes, there was.
Okay, thank you.
Lori, you have the floor.
Hi, guys. You guys are doing awesome. Mr. Pearson, I have to tell you that I absolutely follow everything that you're saying. I'm currently in school as well and going to school raising 3 kids. So following the college guidelines and how they close schools, we were definitely not too far behind them. And I do think it is important to see where they lead, and we might have to follow, maybe follow their lead a little bit just to see what happens with them. Not that we have to take that action, but just see what they do. Also, has it been thought of to ask the teachers who may want to distance learn, teach distance learning, and or take a poll? I got your survey, and it might be worth another shot, Don, to throw out another survey to ask students who would be willing to distance learn, who feels they do well distance learning. That would cut back transportation or give a little bit of leeway, I guess, for bus students and safety and cost. And Mr. Pearson, I think it was you who was talking about possibly reevaluating in November, or something about November, touching base in November. Would it be wise for us starting school in August to reevaluate in November and then again in January, just to keep within guidelines and see where we are, even though things might change September 1st? What are your thoughts on that?
I think some of those decisions might be out of our hands. The reason we're creating these 3 plans is to be prepared for these 3 different scenarios. So my thinking is, if something does happen in November, we will have a plan for it. We may not have to be scheduling a reevaluation. I think as incidents occur or the situation changes, if there's another outbreak of the virus, if we have the plans in place, we're well prepared to make an evaluation at that point and act hopefully more quickly and better than we were able to in March when this kind of hit us and we just weren't ready for it at all. Mr. Levis probably has a better answer than I do, but that's kind of where I was going with the November thing and the multiple scenarios.
Yeah, we're going to be reflecting, just like we did with distance learning, on a daily basis. We're going to have some protocols in place around screening. We'll have protocols in place if a student's in what they call a stable group and somebody comes in and they're sick, then maybe we can just have that stable group go home for 14 days, including whatever teachers have been involved. But so there's going to be all these procedures that are going to be driven by the Department of Health. And everything else, Lori, that you brought up, we've talked about, we've considered. Nothing simple, I mean, the one thing that I think we can agree on is that there are going to be families that are fearful of sending students to school, and we're not going to penalize them for that. But of course, the goal is ultimately to get everybody in, because we still feel that nothing replaces a student in front of a teacher. And while there may be some anomalies, and some kids have done very well with this, from a majority, our students miss their teachers. They love their teachers, and our teachers miss and love their students. So we're going to consider everything that's brought to us, but we have to narrow it down to, like I said, in these different scenarios. And there's a lot of differences with colleges than there obviously are. We have pre-K to 12 plus, and so we have a lot of work to do in a short period of time.
Not that I know how to.
I agree with you, and I understand that, and I do agree
I
wholeheartedly
keep getting
that
unmuted.
children do need to get in the schools because consciously and unconsciously we're social beings, and they especially need to be around people
Right.
in order to learn, just in order to learn themselves how things are, how things work. I just wanted to add the distance learning thing, the teachers, was just a thought. Sure, it was thought of, sure, it's been brought to the table. Doesn't hurt to bring it to the table again.
Sure. No, I agree. And like I said, nothing simple. So any, and that's all. At the end of the day, that's why I said this, like, people are bringing information to us in an advisory capacity, because we may have to make decisions that maybe, I'm hoping most people will support, but we'll have a reason. I think we never make a decision without explaining why we make the decision. There's a difference between not answering a question, right? I always answer questions. Maybe I don't know, or we don't know, or I may give an answer that people don't like, but we're going to give an answer. So, we'll be giving a lot of feedback with the plans as we develop them and why this is our rationale. So I appreciate, again, those questions.
I appreciate that. I think you guys have a lot of people who will work in the trenches with you. And Mr. Murray was probably right on point with, as long as the information is out there and people are aware, that goes a very, very long way.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Laurie. Very much appreciated the comments and questions. Mr. Murphy, any other final raised hands?
We do have one more.
Okay, thank you.
Claire, you're on. If you could just identify yourself.
Claire Murray, 82 Doolittle Street, Coventry. I want to speak more to the thing that was brought up about, and I do know, Mr. Levis, that you have been extremely transparent, as well as the rest of the school committee. But the suggestion about a school committee person maybe at these town council meetings to give updates, not just about what's going on in the school, but what's going on now and on a regular basis, is really important. I go to these town council meetings and there aren't a whole lot of people there. And I believe that you're giving the information to the town council people. I just don't know how many people in the community are getting that information. I'm sitting on a charter review committee right now that's in process. And I can tell you that 3 people last night asked Mr. Wazika if he knew where they could find the information. They don't even know where to look to see if where the school committee meetings are and when they occur. So they've never gone to a school committee meeting. These are people who are in our community who do go to town council. I've seen them at the town council meetings, but they don't even know when the school committee meetings are. They've never attended a school committee meeting, and they don't even know where to look on the calendar, which is, I know it's on the calendar, but they didn't know where to find it. So I don't think it's a bad idea to have someone, and I know, Mr. Levis, how many meetings you go to when you give the superintendent report, but I just think that it's a valid thing to have someone from the school committee that goes and talks about some of these issues, because I know that you're talking to the town council, but the people who are sitting in the audience or listening through Zoom, some of these Zoom meetings, are not hearing it because they don't go to the school committee meetings. And if you don't have a child in the school, I mean, I don't happen to have any child in the school. I just happen to be interested in the whole community as a whole and all the departments. You're not hearing that information. I can promise you. I mean, looking at social media and hearing some of the comments that are made, even within the committee that I'm on, that they just don't have a clue. They really don't. So I'm just asking that maybe you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. I think we did decide, I plan on calling the council president tomorrow and asking that we get put back on the committee now that you know, we basically have established a Zoom routine, and hopefully that'll happen, because you're right, we should be there. And I'll also find out, you know, if it's going to be the last meeting of their month or whatever the plan might be, or the first meeting of the month, or maybe, I don't know how the committee feels about being at every meeting that they have. I'm not sure, that they have to make that decision.
I'm
So
not sure that somebody has to be at all of them, but if there could be some of them and running a commentary, not just what, I mean, there's some great things that's all the schools are doing and the teachers are doing, but these actual problems and things that come up, things that are not being communicated, that people are not seeing, that people who don't have children in the schools are not paying attention to. Just like maybe some of our parents who with children in the schools are not paying attention to what the senior issues are or some of the other issues are. I wish we could work more as a full town and consider every single department within the town, but unfortunately that's not the case. So I think that if someone could make even every other meeting or every third meeting, consolidate it and give some of this out, it would be valuable.
Oh,
That's
you're
just
right.
my opinion.
Yep.
No, I think the point is well taken and well made. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Murphy, any final stragglers on this particular topic?
No.
Nope, that's the last one.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murphy. So great, I guess we can go forward with number 9, another happy topic. The F21 budget calendar and the town council approved F21 budget impact on Coventry Public Schools. Mr. Levis, I assume you wanted to start this?
Just quickly, because I think everybody knows where I stand on, you know, I'm the one that's been promoting about how close we work together, and, you know, to Claire's point, I think we've tried to, I guess my struggle is, my struggle obviously as superintendent has been to engage the council in dialogue. You know, in open dialogue publicly, and that's a frustration because I think we do an incredible job here. I love hearing people. We have more people asking questions tonight than we do typically giving comments, and that's what this is about. You know, so, and I don't want to make this, I mean, obviously it's a huge concern. If the budget, I can't tell people how to vote, but I spent a lot of time with Mr. Anderson, your legal counsel, a couple nights ago, and because I don't want to walk that line. I'm not, you know, I have to be political in terms of I have to deal with everybody, but I'm definitely not a politician. You know, I just need to let people know that if this budget, you know, if I was a resident of Coventry, I know how I would obviously vote when the budget comes up for vote. But it's going to be devastating. And my frustration is that this community has been through enough. You know, I mean, last year, the day before school ended, we had a budget approved. And we had a school community had 4 staff individuals in a 3-week period of time pass away. Then we had the ransomware. And despite all that, we came back with a vibrance that I've never experienced before. And you saw the work that was going on this year. And then, you know, who will forget Friday the 13th in March, right? And we've done as well. And you know, and I say we, I'll tap myself, but it's everybody else that works with me, including the students, the families, many grandparents, and our staff, administration. They've been amazing. And, you know, so we're hitting the ground running, know that we need to come up with a few $1 million probably to get us into a position where we can enter school if they're given the opportunity safely next year. We've been transparent. I mean, you know, it's an overused word, but I don't know what else to do, you know, because I've come here and I said, I don't know of a community where we've worked closer together than myself, Sarah, the town manager and the town finance director. And so to say that you understand that we need this money and then COVID happens, I get it. I get it as I think, I experience it, see the people around. I think I told everybody I had a cousin, an older cousin that passed away from COVID a few weeks ago. And I see the pain that people are experiencing, in terms of losing jobs, or even people that haven't lost their jobs working home, the stress that that creates being with their kids, worrying about safety, the fear. And yet, here we are, here we are. And we sat around, like, I don't want people to think that we can come up with 1.8 million. We can come up with close to that, but it's going to be devastating. And I'm not laying those things out tonight. We will present them July 9th. We have no choice. We'll present to you. But if you remember last year and everything we presented and how painful it was, and people got angry at us, and last year was different. Last year was the municipality, the schools, versus what appeared to be the public. This is different. I don't think the goodwill for schools and for a lot of this community has been better than it has been now. But this is, and I said this before, everything we've done has been to unify this community, everything we've done. We just had a conversation yesterday with the administrators. Usually we do a retreat. I just did 1 hour, and I said, let's talk about the successes, the positive experience you've had despite what's going on, right? Like, our focus has been, this is all we've been able to accomplish despite COVID-19, where first couple of months is, look at all the things we're losing. Look at everything we've lost, because of this. So not only did we survive, and the principals went over, and administrators, it's amazing how this has pulled people together, pulled colleagues together. And we had a culture of really being able to thrive through all this. And that's not to take away how painful and how challenging this is. So to have this come thrown upon the community, and to not even allow the community to vote on the budget. If the council had asked questions, right? Only Dr. Dixon asked the question of all the 4 times we went with them. If the council had asked questions and said, hey, understand why we need the 1.8. I mean, I don't think anybody could explain it better than Sarah's explained it, But they never asked questions. Try to understand why we needed this. Why did the school committee unanimously say, we're going to stick to the budget? Because we know we need this moving forward. Because you easily could have said, let's do 100 layoffs. Remember, I brought it back the last time just to make sure we had that solidarity. And we recognize this is what we need. So, here we are. An easy decision, and again, it's not personal, it's just professional. I think Mr. Wazika is a great guy. We've had a great relationship, but to put it forward as a 0 level funding, right? To put it forward that way, all the work that we've done from October, and just to say, well, we can't afford it, to know the cause. Think about it, if that goes through, how is this community ever going to bounce back? Even if we had 1.8 million in savings, okay, we fill a gap next year. What about the following year, right? That's a hole. So, I mean, but it's not even that. It's what that 1.8 was. So, I tell myself this all the time. You've probably heard me say it, that I'm batting 1,000. Every challenging situation I've got myself into, I've gotten through. But to me, the community doesn't need this right now. If it went out, people were educated, they were informed, they understood the budget, and they said, hey, we still can't do this, knowing what's going to happen, knowing that. I may not like it, but at least they're informed, they're making a decision. I don't feel like there's an informed decision being made by a few elected officials who aren't even going to let the taxpayers, and I hear that rhetoric all the time. What about families? Grandparents who are taking care of their kids, aren't they taxpayers? People that are buying these homes aren't lasting on the market 3 days in Coventry. They're going for premium dollars and they're being bought by families. Aren't they taxpayers? So if you sense a little frustration, I am frustrated, not for me, I'm frustrated for this community. We've worked so hard, our teachers, our families, our staff, our students, to have to experience this, because when we present the cuts, you can already know what they're going to be. You already can tell what they're going to be. Things that we might have saved a little bit last year, And that's the sad part, to see this have to divide versus having the entire taxpayer voters be able to vote on the quality of education in Coventry. So I'm frustrated, but, and I told myself tonight, I just wanted to hear what the committee said, but obviously that didn't happen. So my understanding is, and that, the council did say, even though it was a 4-to-1 vote, they did say they wanted to go to the voters, right? So my understanding is right now, the financial town meeting would be on the 14th, I believe, and the all-day referendum would be on the 16th, unless that's changed. So there's so much, even all the conversations tonight, I consider those, we're having some good conversations. That's what I believe public meetings are about. So, next school committee meeting will come back, and but I'm just going to be matter of fact. This is the way it is, and if people are upset, like I said, I know Claire was talking about people can't find our meetings and things like that. Well, if you go on the town website, I know, and just like on our website, all the school committee members, you can access myself or any of our administrators through that. On the town website, I know you can access the town management and the town council members. And, I think we hash things out. We have open dialogue and we hash things out. We don't always agree. You don't know, obviously, don't agree with me all the time. I don't agree. But I think we look how we handle things, as a collective group. And I think that's so powerful, and we model for this community. This is how you should identify solutions. Nothing's perfect, but anyways, somehow I believe we'll get through this, but I'm not sure what that will look like. There'll be pain. There'll definitely be pain involved, but my responsibility is to make sure we put the best product out there for every single student and family. And if you don't think that schools, I don't care if you have nobody connected to schools, and maybe like Claire said, we have to do a better job explaining why schools are important, why they should be the heart of a community. I mean, even to people that don't have, I have a responsibility to the resale value of their home, right? Because we know that. So anyways, that's enough for me.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Could you maybe explain, you kind of skirted around the issue. I believe there is a bill at the General Assembly that may or may not be signed that will allow a town council to
Correct.
not follow the charter and basically not bring a vote to the public. So if that in fact gets passed, could you explain what could happen in Coventry and what maybe we could do before they would actually vote to table a townwide referendum?
So all I know about the bill, and again, I'm not a legislative wizard, but I do know that there's a bill that would allow a council, I believe there's 13 communities in Rhode Island that have like the FTM all-day referendum, and would allow them under an emergency situation to pass the budget so that they could go and send out the tax bills. And I don't know where, I was told it sits at the governor's house. I guess my only saving grace here is that I heard numerous council members say they wanted to go to the public. So I don't know how you avoid, I don't know how we, what the mechanism is to avoid that if they did that. I mean, other than a revolt. And I'm not trying to, start a riot here, but I don't know what the mechanism would be if they did that. And there are people that are much more savvy politically than I am on this panel. But, again, I'm hoping it's about accountability. I say this and I know people get frustrated, but if you don't like the job I do, look on this screen, you only need to get 3 people, convince them not to get rid of me, right? I mean, it's the truth. And so you walk this line, but I keep that laser beam focused on what I believe, because of the people I work with, what's in the best interest of students and families. And, I think it's accountable. And I think, people hold us accountable. And I would love to see that on the other side. Again, that's just my opinion. I'm not speaking as Craig Levis here. You know, I don't see that happening. I mean, how could a X number of people just pass a budget after all the transparency and explaining our needs and just put it forward without even considering, well, maybe there are taxpayers that would like an opportunity to vote on the school department budget as they presented, as was approved 5-0 by the school committee. Is a novel idea.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Levis. Mr. Pearson, I'm going to start with you. Any comments you'd like to make?
I think any comment I made has been hashed out thoroughly at this point, because there's a lot of different facets to what's happening here, and you managed to mention them all, or most of the ones I was thinking about. As you said, the saving grace, I guess, or the good news is it's going to the voters, apparently, all-day referendum. So voters should have a say in the process, and we shall see what happens. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mrs. Kalunian.
I gotta say, I was extremely upset when I watched the meeting, and I wasn't I was upset as a school committee member, but I was also upset as a member of the community, because now that directly affects me and everyone around me as far as our house values. And you know, I think I mentioned this before. People don't come to Coventry and pay $500,000 for a home because we have state-of-the-art garbage collection. I'm sorry, they just don't do it. They do it for the schools. That's all I have to say. And I'm going to shut up before I get myself in trouble.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Kalunian. Mr. Murray.
So I made a very impassioned, probably overly impassioned speech at the end of the council meeting after waiting an hour and a half, and probably being pretty grumpy because I watched the whole meeting and hadn't eaten. Yeah, I unloaded, and you know, part of it is a frustration, and mirrors the superintendent's frustration beyond everything, that the lack of communication, the fact of respect between public bodies to do their job, and the fact that I had to watch while they asked question after question of Dr. Dixon, who's not a school committee member anymore, and no disrespect for her, but having to stand up there and answer questions on our behalf, which I found disrespectful, because if they needed to ask those questions, my phone is always open, my email's there. I think all of us are. And so had they just reached out, we would have gotten them any answers, but they waited until that night to start pondering on this, knowing full well, and I know full well they didn't get that full budget document until that afternoon. So how responsible is that? Arbitrarily and capriciously cutting 1.8 million without fully understanding where we sat as a school committee and what considerations we based it on. I sat there during that meeting, during the joint meeting, barely one question was asked of us. Thank you very much, have a good night, log off. So, you know, my frustration boiled up, and it's still boiling up about this whole thing. One of the things is they didn't, you know, they're talking about this, I think it's the bill numbers H8015, does mandate that you would have to have a public hearing with 10 days notice, but that's not a public, you know, they can accept those comments or not, and then they vote on the budget. Hopefully they don't. The superintendent's right. During that meeting, and most of you know, a lot of them pontificated about the financial town meeting and how great it was, and this needs to go to the public. And I said in my comments, I hope it does, because let the public vote on this. The unfortunate thing is they didn't let them vote on the 1.8. So now we're going to ask them to basically vote down the 0, which, you know, is a bit of a tough lift. But I think we need to educate the public as best we can. This isn't just about schools. What people don't understand is they're not basing their decisions on pure math. So had they called Sarah and talked to their own finance director, who I've heard very little from, by the way, I think they would have realized that they're setting themselves up for a huge structural town deficit next year, and there's no place to cut. So everyone's going to yell and scream this year, yay, you know, we're getting that zero, not realizing, yeah, I know we all expected a bump this year. Some people who are going to get caught up in the reval. That would have been pulled in, but now next year, the rate per thousand is definitely going to have to go up. And it's going to have to go up more than 4% because I don't see how we're going to cut anymore. And I don't see, after cutting parks and DPW and everything else, and all of the supposed fat that they had over there, they're not leaving enough left without cutting some real services. And I'm talking stuff that people really want and appreciate. And we know that. We have a 1.5% increase next year. That is what it is. And people may not like that, but we had already renegotiated the contract to get a cost savings. So we can't come back to the table next year. It's just not going to happen. And then never mind the fact that, and I'm just reminding everybody who's maybe watching, we're still not funding the building maintenance and operations to a level that will allow us to tap in the housing aid. So on top of everything else, we're not actually at a balanced budget. We came in at 1.8, struggling to stay in the black. That's what people need to understand. We weren't at a balanced budget. You saw the holes that we're already trying to patch with maybe some of the savings, if we realize savings, trying to patch the lunch program and some other things that Sarah's been, you know, really trying to shore up our books and do the right thing based on math. And so now we're underfunding, and Sarah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's around 1.8 million we'd have to come up with this year in operational maintenance dedicated to buildings. It's 2% of our operational budget, right?
Yeah, it was about 1.5 when we last, when I last looked at it, 1.5, 1.8, but we won't hit that threshold.
Right, so I stand corrected. So not only we were already not meeting that threshold, so that means, you know, the council keeps bringing up, oh, well, didn't we give you 200,000 to put in your schools, this great capital money? Well, guess what? We can't get reimbursed any of that money. We usually get a 44% reimbursement. And by the way, we had a whole building effort going on. How does that look? So I just really hope we can educate the public. I hope they're considering the future. And what I'd ask the council to do, I would challenge them to project out a little bit of what next year is going to look like, because I know it's an election year and some of those council members won't be here. And I know that the town manager said that he's not going to be here. So are they just setting us up for failure? I know I'm trying to be here. A lot of you are trying to be here, and we're going to be saddled with this. And the public really needs to understand what they're voting on, because if they vote for this zero, they're kicking a huge can. They're not kicking a can, they're kicking a barrel down the road to next year. And it is going to be a huge lift, huge lift. And it's not going to be about unions, and it's not going to be about, you know, sports and other things. It's going to be about operating. And, you know, I'll say my last thing here. If they vote down the budget, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to whine. I'm not going to talk about teachers. We're going to do our job. We're going to make the cuts we have to do. And they're going to be painful. And everyone's going to cry. And I'm done with it. We went through it last year. You know, I think everybody's done with it. We're going to feel the pain because those, you know, everything comes with consequences. That's just it in life. You choose. And we're going to make a value judgment in this community. When we make that, we have to stand by it. We stood by, I'm very proud of this committee. We stood by that 1.8. We didn't threaten. We didn't come out with plans. We were asked to. We didn't come out with plans. We didn't cut teachers to the bone, laying them off, knowing they would come back. We didn't play games. The superintendent vowed not to play games. And so I'm very frustrated because we didn't play games, and we really tried to do an honest effort this year. And when the communication breaks down, you know, I'm okay with decisions when they're described to me and there's some math behind them and some validity. But when you make arbitrary decisions like this, you just push all logic aside and you make a decision. To me, that's just not right. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am extremely disappointed with what was done. And I think it was done purposely. they said the council members sat down with Madam Chair, myself, and Mr. Levis and said, oh, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. The fact that the teachers have negotiated a $500,000 pay cut, about the steps. They thought it was absolutely fantastic. And then COVID hits. And then all of a sudden, the issue was about the taxpayers in town. Well, I don't know what taxpayers are they talking about? And what small businesses are they talking about? I haven't heard a complaint from a taxpayer in town, in my district. They know my number. They know my email address. I don't know about any of you others, but I haven't received a call or a complaint about the school budget. And then as I hear Dr. Dixon eloquently state the need for 1.8 million, and John Arnett is on the phone, and they say, John, how much is that? And they say, oh, it's 75 cents per 1,000. 75 cents per 1,000. It's just beyond my mind. It goes beyond rational thinking. It's balderdash is what it is. Absolute balderdash. They did this because they did not like the outcome of last year. That we took it to budget and the town citizens voted to approve our budget and cut it from the town. Now, James, you know as well as I do, they have a rainy day fund. And that rainy day fund, I hear, will be at $11 million. They can't take 1.8 million. I mean, it's raining. The school department is raining. They can't take $1.8 million out of that budget. 75 cents per 1,000. A 2 point. Am I going on? Yes.
No,
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Florio, I just want you to realize that the rainy day fund is not what we need. We need something to be taxed, because even if we got 1.8, because the manager did say that if emergencies occur and we need extra funding, they will take it out of the emergency rainy day fund. But quite honestly, that will do us absolutely no good except get us through next year. What happens the following year, it's not based on the tax rate. That 1.8 million that they could come up with will do us no good. We'll have that hole to fill. So I just want you to realize.
So it's all about maintenance of effort.
Exactly.
It's all about maintenance of effort and the fact that they don't want to fund us because of maintenance of effort. It's absolutely insane. And I think it's personal. If I had to say something, Mr. Levis, I would say this is personal, extremely personal. They don't respect us. They have no use for us. And that's because of the charter change that gave them control over our budget. And that's something they always wanted. And they have it. And I don't think they're going to have a financial town meeting. I think they have their 3 votes on the school committee, on the town council. And I know Mrs. Bacon wants it to go before the voters. I know Ann Dixon, Dr. Dixon wants it to go before the voters. But I cannot speak for the other 3 councilmen, because if they have their choice, they're going to ram it down our throats. They're going to ram this down the town's throats, because 2 of them aren't even seeking election. So
Mr. Cody said he wanted to go to he wanted to go to taxpayers. So
well we know
that's 3 people. So
yeah, but Respect, and you've told me this a lot. What happens when people disrespect you? Do you believe them anymore? You know?
Yeah.
Do you believe them anymore? So, all I can say is, I hope it goes before the voters, and I think I know the outcome. I'm pretty sure I know the outcome. And I don't, even if the voters defeat the budget, I don't think, what happens? We have no voice. We have no voice at a financial town meeting. We can protest, but we can't say, they can't change the budget. They're not allowed under the charter to change the budget anymore. So we're at a complete disadvantage because the voters can vote down the budget and we're still in a fix. And it's a budget that hurts children, it hurts seniors, and it hurts particularly children, grandparents, and our senior population. And that's all I have to say, Madam Chair. I've been here a long time, 38 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Never. It's sad. It's truly sad.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. I can't say that I haven't seen it before because we've been level funded before without justification, quite honestly. What I find most disappointing about this past Monday's events was that it's so short-sighted. The town council knows what level funding has done to schools in the past, and they proceeded to do it anyway. With this sort of feeling like, well, if there's a real emergency, they'll get it from the rainy day fund. And that's not the solution. And they, of all people, understand what a structural deficit is. And that's what we will have next year, even if we get through this present year. We will have a huge structural deficit that it'll take years to get out of, years. Just like last year when we laid off all those people, those teachers, how many times did we say publicly, this is a result of the funding formula, us being a town that received extra money for part of that 7 years, but the town didn't reciprocate and give their share. So we got extra money from the state, but that was money that we had not received for many, many years. And they were just trying to make it good so that everybody, the winners, the losers across the different districts. But we said, how many times did we say, we're falling off the cliff now because Coventry did not tax its citizens in a reciprocal way to match or give enough money for what the need really was. And so, that's what we're setting ourselves up for again. I'm not 100% sure if it does hopefully go to the citizens. I agree. I think it will be voted down. What happens after that, I'm not sure about the fine wording of the town charter. I don't know if we just revert back to last year and then they don't have to even resubmit a budget. I'm not sure exactly what would happen, but I assume the citizens could put some pressure to say, come up with another budget. This isn't going to work. We'll find that out when the time comes. What I'm really hopeful for, anyone out there listening, if you think there's a chance the town council will change their mind and not bring it to the public, I would ask that you write an email to your town councilman, telephone them and say, please let the public decide on this budget that you have put forward before it's too late. And that's all I really have to say on the matter. I know that our next meeting will be discussing some of the things that are going to have to happen. But to say that we can cut 1.8 million from our budget right now is an impossibility. We all know that. It's an impossibility. So where we go from there is another story. Mr. Florio, did you want to say something?
I just have one more thing to say, Madam Chair. Ed Wazika's actions were despicable, absolutely despicable. He sat down with us. He sat down with Mr. Levis. Him and Mr. Arnett sat down with Miss Mangiarelli many, many times. And the day before, that day, he has a meeting with Craig Levis. He just doesn't show up. The day of the council meeting, he blows off.
Dave, that's not necessarily true. I don't, I can speak from my own experiences, but we had a meeting scheduled and he didn't just blow me off. I asked if we were having the meeting over there and I got no response. And then Donna had called over and said they weren't going to meet with us because they were preparing for the night. So I didn't say that he blew me off. I said
okay.
That, but I don't want to get into it. I think I've said it. It's been in the press. I've been clear. So.
If I may, to your point, Kathy, just the logic, and don't get me wrong, I respect Ed in a lot of ways. He took on a heavy lift in his position and, has performed well in many capacities, but the logic behind the budget, because people remember this was the reval year. And I kind of shook my head after this meeting because just so people understand, what they did was they kept the overall levy the same, which means that they pushed the tax rate per thousand down by, I think it was $3. So, when you really look at it, he had made the comment between 7,500 and 8,500 houses were going to be at 0 or less than 0, right? In a reval year where house prices are at a maximum that we've seen since 2006 to 7, interest rates are down at 2.75, somewhere, depending on your credit. So I'm looking at this and just saying from an operational standpoint, I'm not sure how they're doing their math, because if anything, you would still take advantage of the reval. You still would have been under your per thousand rate, right? That would have been added in. You still would have been under the you still would have probably had a cost saving on the per thousand, right? Still could have offered that to the public, but basically increased on the reval, which I think is legit because house values go up. So from a sheer math standpoint, and everything goes up, right? We know that. I mean, gas goes up, utilities, everything. So just to say 0, we're going to assume, and I made this analogy to Miss Mangiarelli, and I said, if I made a widget and the widget cost me $3, how much do I actually need to sell it for? Well, I can't sell it for $2.90, right? But in this town, we kind of think we can do that. Oh, well, we'll be okay. We'll do less than. So again, politics aside, because I really don't care, and I'm not going to get, I don't have anything personal against council, but
either.
Why we're not listening to our finance directors, and especially on that side, because he's got to be doing the math too. And I don't know how Ed came up with this decision because it doesn't make any sense. From an operational standpoint, all you have to do is project out a couple of years. This doesn't make sense. So, when we talk, we all talk a lot, right? Including myself, I talk a lot. Well, I really want to start talking about the math and the data-driven decisions, and that's what I don't hear from the other side is, how did you come up with this? I can read the document. I know how they came up with it. They cut 400,000 out of parks. They cut 400,000 out of DPW. They scalped it, and then they have a high collection rate, which they're hoping they get. And I know budgets are all an estimate, right? But I don't know. I mean, I'm just putting that out to everybody, and hopefully for whoever's listening, it just doesn't make sense. And for those who don't even care about schools, who maybe dislike unions or anything else, you have to start asking yourself, are decisions based on reasonable data? Are decisions based on real life? Are you just feeding into what people are telling you? Are you just feeding into the 0 that the immediate satisfaction that we get out of that and some politician gives you? And I just don't, I don't think people can answer that. But, I'm asking people to dig in a little bit, because it doesn't take much to scratch the surface and figure out why we're always in this trouble. This has been going on for years. I'm just wondering at what point I can stop focusing on digging out of holes, and both as a member of the public. I haven't been on the school committee that long, But, I just shook my head as a normal member of the public every year and just said, at what point are we going to get to the, to some sort of fiscal stability here? And I'm sure there's a lot out there who are thinking the same thing. So that's all. I'm sorry, I'm getting in my soapbox again, but I'm just very frustrated by the situation. So I appreciate the time.
We all are, Mr. Lu. We all are.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. I think, we all are extremely frustrated. And for the average person in the public, it's a difficult concept to try to get your head around. I've been steeped in this for, 18 years. And my original concept of how it all worked has really changed over the years. You get to understand. I mean, my work is not on city planning or tax rates or any of that. I work at Brown University. I'm an educator. So it took me a while to understand it. I thought, oh, we'll take it out of the rainy day fund. Why not? I didn't get the whole structural deficit piece, but there are some longstanding folks on that town council that know better. And they understand the fiscal impact that this is going to do in the future. And so that's what I fear most for. I fear for schools and I fear for the future of town. And so I am very hopeful, first of all, that it does go to the public and that there isn't a decision just to go to last year and go from there, and that they will in fact reconsider the budget and listen to the townspeople, because I really truly believe the townspeople will not approve this budget if it goes to an all-day referendum. But that being said, Mr. Murphy, do you see any hands raised?
There are no hands.
Surprising. Okay, well, that was certainly an honest discussion. And last but not least, I do want to reach out to those of us that do support our council, including myself. They're elected officials. They try their best. I'm not sure where they're coming from. I can't get inside their heads. I can't get inside the town manager's head either. I truly believe all of them. I don't think it's a personal vendetta against schools. I kind of honestly believe they think they're doing the right thing, even though I don't think it is. And I think it's short-sighted. But I don't want to leave that thought that we don't respect that, in fact, they serve this town as well. And I refuse to believe that as school committee elected officials, we're not respected by them. Because I don't want to get down in the dirt and roll around. So that's just my final thought. I hope that we can all rise above this and continue to work together. I know that's a hard thing to do, but that's what my challenge to all of us is, to try to do that.
Well, I apologize, man.
That's okay. I understand your passion, Dave. We're all frustrated, and especially during this time, this is a rough time for everyone. So, I always hope that people do the things they do because at least they believe in it, not because they have some kind of
Vendetta?
Vendetta. Yes, exactly. I'm probably naive, but that's how I've lived my life. And I hope that's how I'll feel when I finally put my head down to rest. Okay. I guess you're up, Mr. Superintendent, or move on to number.
So I'm
10.
gonna just put a few words on this, and what I plan on doing is coming back with some concrete data about what's transpired this year. I really wanted to focus on the successes. Last time we put it as a celebration, but just me putting words on it won't, isn't really appropriate. I need to get more information from individuals. Again, you talk about respect, and I've always been, believe that I've worked with people that have had titles and different things, and my experience in life is that no matter what your title is or who you are, respect is something you earn, and I'm hoping that we do that. I'm hoping that, and I'm tying it into this topic, is that I believe that our school community has earned so much mutual respect from each other. Today I received another email from a parent offering to do anything they could do to support, thanking teachers, and just had a great experience. Not that it wasn't difficult, but a great experience in terms of teachers supporting their children. And I think we've come a long way to earn the respect, all of us, this entire school community, and a lot of our partners. A lot of the municipal departments have pulled together and supported us in this same, keeping that focus on what's in the best interest of the community, our students, our families, while everybody's going through the same challenges, right? So, but to be able to put aside your differences, your challenges, to keep that laser beam focus on community. And so I will come back with some more hard, concrete facts around this. But, when you talked about respect, I just, I have the utmost respect for our students, our families, our staff. And it's not just one big love fest, it's like, because when you see the challenges, you see people crying over, because they care so much and they want to do so much for a child, and having a police officer say, hey, I'll take a ride over to that family and, spend an hour there, bringing a lunch to a student, sitting on the steps with them. I mean, these are the things that happen every single day. So we'll come back. I'm not going to come back with these stories, but come back with some data around, despite everything, this is what we were able to do and survive, not just survive, but thrive. So hopefully people will forgive me and let me come back with some more concrete data from our staff and our families. So it'll be interesting to go through the surveys and see some of the positives that'll, because I'm sure they exist, not just the challenges. So that's that.
Thank you, Mr. Levis, and I agree. I have never been more inspired during this sort of once-in-a-lifetime event. I mean, hopefully the world is not going to have to go through another pandemic like this, at least not in the time that I'm still left to live on the earth. It really is a once-in-a-lifetime thing for me, I hope. And for many of us, we've never really experienced this. We've never had to deal with it. And, to have seen what happened in our community brings tears to my eyes. It's been so inspiring to see what we've been able to accomplish in our schools. And I look forward to some of the things that you may have data-wise to sort of reinforce what we all know to be true. I haven't had one parent email me, call me, and say anything negative about what their experience for their child was. And it could have been a complete disaster. And yet everybody did do their due diligence and, did the best they could. I'm sure it wasn't perfect in every single case, but it was damn close. And so I'm just grateful that this is the community, of leaders and educators and learners that have done their best to try to make this work. A situation that's certainly not over, and there's more yet to come, and probably more suffering to come for our country and for the world. And so I think we just need to remain optimistic and hope for the best in the fall. But certainly indications look like, until we get a vaccine, it's going to be a little dicey out there. So I just want to, just tell everybody how grateful I am about all the work that's been done, and grateful for our parents and for all of their willingness to help their children. And maybe because of being stuck at home with their kids and in remote learning, they've realized, I've heard this many times, I never knew what teachers did. Oh my goodness. So anyway, I'm going on too much too. Did anybody from the committee want to say anything, Mr. Pearson?
No comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Colonian?
I don't have any comment. I just want to say, Kathy, I've heard several people say exactly what you said. I can't believe what teachers have to do. They love teachers. So I hear the same thing.
Thank you. Mr. Murray, final thoughts?
No, nothing really. I lived it for the last couple months, so I get it. And I'm appreciative, so
Thanks.
thank you.
And finally, Mr. Florio?
I hear the same thing, Madam Chair. I hear that they're tired, though.
Yeah.
They're tired and they're exhausted, and they're hopeful that they don't have to do this in the fall again. They just want to go to work and they want to go back to normal. But the problem is, there may not be. There's a new normal, and it may not happen. But we have to do our job. Mr. Levis, we have to do our job and make sure that we get as many children back to school as we can. And that's all I have to say, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. I agree. Mr. Murphy, we're going to go into citizens' comments. Do you see any hands raised?
There are none.
We'll give it a minute just in case. I think people who probably already talked probably don't have anything more to say. So going once, going twice. Still no hands?
No hands.
Still no hands.
All right, thank you. Then I guess we can entertain a motion to schedule our next meeting.
Okay, Madam Chair. Let me get this down here. Madam Chair, I make a motion that the next virtual meeting of the school committee be scheduled for Thursday, July 9, 2020 at 6 p.m.
Second the motion.
Thank you all. I don't think we need a roll call vote, but I guess, Donna, you can ask us individually.
Okay. Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray. Luke?
Sorry.
Just put your hand-
Yes.
All right. Donna Colonian
Yes.
and James Pearson.
Yes.
Motion carries. And finally, the adjournment. I have 8:53. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the meeting be adjourned at 8:53 p.m.
Second.
Roll call, please. Vote call, please.
Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colonian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for your attention. We had a big group on for a while there. It was nice seeing everyone, and thank you so much for all of your support. See you at the next rodeo.
Okay.
Gonna
Take
miss
care.
you.
Thanks, Madam
Bye,
Chair.
everyone.